And welcome into the Tuesday edition of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porter with you on this Tuesday morning, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. How's everybody doing? Joseph, what's going on, my man?
I'm doing okay. I don't know that I'm doing as well as you are. You seem really spry and sprightly today.
I went to bed at like 9 o'clock last night. There's a lot of energy flowing through these veins today. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be a heck of a show here today.
Well, good. You can carry me.
I'm going to try to. I'm going to try to carry us all here with some energy this morning. It's going to be a great show here today. We've got a lot to react to with the NHL Trading Deadline and the Nashville Predators. Dan Rosen will join us at 7:45 from NHL.com to look at the trade deadline around the league and get to some Nashville Predators topics as well. Chris Mason at 8:30, Preds TV analyst, drops by. Our man Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports at 9 o'clock on all things NFL. So a lot still to come here today on the show, and we'll take your thoughts, as always, on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Well, Joe, let's get right into it because we've been talking about this day and this series of events for about a month and a half when it comes to the Nashville Predators, and that is the trade deadline. And we talked about it yesterday. I was really interested to see what the Predators were going to do. We had the poll question up. Would fans rather see the Predators stand pat? Would they rather see the Predators sell? Or would they rather see the Predators buy? I think at the last count, 13% say that they would rather see the Predators buy. And I guess technically, that's what they did yesterday. The Predators did buy yesterday. They go out and get defenseman Erik Gudbranson for a 7th-round pick in 2023. So the compensation that you're giving up there essentially amounts to nothing, basically. But technically, the Predators did buy yesterday. Joe Rexrode, your reaction?
Yeah, well, you trolls, you 13% got your way. There is some, in all seriousness, and I tweeted this, I owe an apology to the people, and maybe you do too, because I think we were in agreement. And on some of the David Poile comments on Darren Donick and Chase, which to me was, and I think to us, was sort of, okay, it's a GM kind of brushing it off and saying, yeah. But actually, if you go back to him, he was pretty much telling people, like, there's no way he's selling anybody, right? Yeah. I mean, it's basically what happened here. So, yeah, being technically a buyer, let's get into him real quick. Say his name again.
David Poile?
No, Gudbranson.
Oh, Erik Gudbranson. It's like David Poile?
David Poole?
Yes.
Didn't we call him David Porth or something recently?
Probably did. Yes.
Okay, so as soon as that trade happens, Vingan tweets out, okay, do you follow this Micah Blake McCurdy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the at ineffective math?
At ineffective math. Yeah. So immediately Vingan tweets out this, these, I love these bubble charts, with the blobs.
It's like a different language.
Which apparently says that he's like the worst player in the history of hockey, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm reading this. I'm like, oh, okay, so this guy's terrible? I don't know. He's been with 5 teams. And according to Micah Blake McCurdy, quote, so this is his tweet. Erik Gudbranson to Nashville inexplicably is an extremely poor defender. Okay.
Yeah.
So I see that on Twitter. And then I'm, of course, because I go to Twitter for all my news and views.
Big Twitter guy.
Yeah, big Twitter guy. Will not get on Instagram. And I see Hal Gill tweets, and Hal Gill says, great pickup. I want to get the exact quote from Hal Gill. But basically he's like, this is a great pickup. So I'm like, okay, so I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think anymore. But like you said, I mean, it's technically a buy. It's basically just another body at the bottom of the defensive depth chart. Obviously, they've had injuries everywhere.
They have.
But it does. And David Poile, I took away many things from David Poile's presser yesterday. Many, many things.
Yes.
But one thing I took away was, like, I think he kind of looks like if you can say you bought, like, you feel good, right? Like, that's on its own, in itself, is a sign of success.
Right, and that was one of the takeaways I had yesterday as well. And what we won't know is what were the phone calls like for David Poile leading up to this. What were the prices that were being offered? I mean, David Poile, and like you said, we've got a lot to talk about today with David Poile and some of his words yesterday at the press conference. But he did say, I mean, he was answering phones and he was talking, and I think he used the word, it's free to talk. So it's not like he was just sitting there and not talking to people on the phone. Said he talked to all 31 teams multiple times when it comes to leading up to the trade deadline and the decisions made yesterday by the Predators. But it didn't really seem like there was much wiggle room for David Poile heading into yesterday about selling. And I do wonder, in the last few weeks before this run happened, what were the prices like? What were the offers like? And at what point did David Poile decide in his mind, this is not the route I'm going? I believe in this group, and we're going to keep it together. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I know we'll have a lot of Poile sound later, but I tried to ask sort of that question, at what point, and there was no specific timeline, but I don't think it was. I don't think he woke up yesterday saying, "Let's get somebody dealt away here."
Yeah.
I think he was resolved during this stretch of success to not do it. So, frankly, I'm surprised by that. Also, I might even like if I were advising David Poile, I appreciate David Poile's honesty. I might tell him to lie.
Lie.
Just lie to the media. People love lying to the media.
Yes.
Because to me, it's like the price tag was a big question going into yesterday, or just going into the whole process.
Sure.
And it sounds like that was somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah.
Not that there wasn't any deal that was so good that he wouldn't have changed his mind, but it sounded at least like the bar was real high.
Sounds that way for sure. Ryan Porth, your reaction to the Predators, I guess technically being a buyer yesterday, but I guess more realistically basically standing pat. What is your reaction to this deadline for the Nashville Predators?
Well, y'all laughed at me when I brought this up as a possibility in the last week or so that they would make a Jan Hlavich type move.
I don't even know if I'd consider this that,
well,
yes.
I mean, Jan Hlavich was acquired for a 7th-round pick. He even gave up more than a 7th-round pick.
He was.
For Goodbranson.
That's true.
Joe, you mentioned how Goodbranson is another body on the blue line. That's probably a good way to put it. He'll be playing defense for the Nashville Predators.
Maybe.
If you want a comparison to Jared Tenorti, he's probably a little worse than Jared Tenorti in my mind.
That's comforting.
Yeah.
All the Penguins beat writers yesterday were laughing at Goodbranson and this trade, but it wasn't surprising, and there is a scenario within this entire picture where this turns out to be the right move for David Poile. I just don't feel like that is a high percentage, that what he did or didn't do yesterday was the right move. But we've seen crazier things happen in this sport.
We have, and we're going to begin to find out our answer tonight. The Predators taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've got 7 games coming up of their final 13 against those top 3 in Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Florida. So the Blackhawks won last night. They're 2 points behind the Predators right now. So this is going to be a race for the playoffs. And if they don't make it, or if they get put out in the first round, there are going to be some Predators fans that are not very happy at all with what happened yesterday, or more specifically, what did not happen yesterday with some of the decisions to hold on to some expiring contracts. So that's the position that you put yourself in if you're the Nashville Predators. Now, as Sports said, if it works out and you're able to put together a run here and be dangerous, you look pretty smart if you're David Poile on the Predators. But this is going to be fascinating to see how this finishes. It's going to require a level of play from the Predators against these top 3 teams that we quite frankly have not seen yet. So can they get to that level?
Chase and I did Preds Insiders last night in the 6 o'clock hour, so like 12 hours ago. And we got a text into the text line about at some point you have to buy. You have to go all in. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, they have done that for each of the last 6 years now.
We are well past that point.
Like at some point, it needs to be the opposite, and you have to recoup some of the assets that you gave up. They didn't do that. So, I mean, a 2nd and a 4th round pick, if that's what it would have been for Granlund and Haula, no guarantees, but there's certainly no guarantee that they're going to make the playoffs.
A lot of guys on this team were draft picks, that they picked.
Yeah.
Second-round picks, lower than that, worked out pretty well. It's nice to have those picks. You said if they go on a run, Robby, they look pretty smart. But what if they go on a run, make the playoffs, and then lose in 5?
I don't know if that's a run.
Okay, so you're when you say run, you're saying get into the playoffs and do some damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, just on Good Branson, because I found this just funny because I'm like, okay, Vingan, worst player ever. All the stuff you just said, everybody's laughing about it. So here's Willie Donick. Branson, 6'5", 222. Third on Ottawa in hits with 92. Third in shorthanded time on ice. 29 years old, 554 games of experience. Could challenge, potentially upgrade third D pair role with Tenorti and then Harper. That Tenorti and Harper have played, except he's a right-hand shot. And then Hal said, great get for the Preds. Who do I believe?
I don't think it's a very good get.
Okay. We're going the Michael Blake McCurdy route.
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of feel like he's the
been
8th or
on
9th.
5 teams in 3 years. That should probably tell you.
Maybe he's
you
just too good to be kept.
When that blue line is healthy, I kind of feel like he's the 8th or 9th guy on the depth chart.
That's the thing. I'm not sure how much he's going to play for the Predators.
It really doesn't. It really shouldn't count as buying. It will.
Right.
It goes down in the books as you bought on trade deadline day. But I mean,
And Poyle said yesterday that he bought.
Yeah, small buy.
Well, again, no, I know. I mean, Poyle, see, this is where the context of the entire history of the franchise is important because you guys will remember, and I mean, I know you guys were in 3rd grade or whatever, but many, many years, Poyle probably could do nothing but sell, right? That's what you were doing. You were selling. You were trying to get into a competitive realm.
Yeah.
So now, just being a buyer is just exciting on its own.
Yeah.
Apparently
so. Let's introduce our poll question of the day at 1025 The Game on Twitter. Preds fans, do you agree with David Poyle's approach to not be a seller and be a small buyer before Monday's trade deadline? Yes or no? We are very early in the voting process. Joe, 71% say yes, 29% say no. What do we think of that?
it's early.
Look, the early returns as of late, it's not changed all that much as the show has gone along.
Yeah. Well, look, hey, see, the thing is, I think some people can't separate, be excited about what's going on with this team.
Sure.
And the idea of you can still do that and still, try to have a big picture approach.
Right.
You can say, I wanted him to sell something and recoup some assets, as Porth just put it, and I still am very excited about this team and where it's going, and they could make the playoffs. Now, I will say this on the Granlund thing. Poyle just told us that, this week nobody's coming back. So,
yeah.
So, if the playoffs is very important to make, I can see how you would say, well, you get rid of Granlund right now. I mean, is it even worth playing these games?
Well, there's 9 guys out right now.
No, that's true.
For a while.
Do you feel like there's a case to be made that Granlund is more important to getting to the playoffs than he is actually in the playoffs? Do you understand what I'm saying there? The question has been, well, is Granlund going to make a difference in the playoffs? Well, they have to get there first.
Right.
And the point you just made, Joe.
Well, especially now.
Right.
Yeah.
The point that you just made of how they're not going to get anybody back until next week. If you take Granlund and Holla out of the lineup, you're replacing them with Chicago players.
Yeah.
AHL.
Yeah. So, right, in the short term, I think you look big picture, and if you get a really good offer, then I think you take it. But it didn't happen.
It did not happen. We are off and running today here on Robby and Rexrode. We've got a lot to get to with the Nashville Predators and the trade deadline yesterday. Taking your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. When we come back, there didn't appear to be a whole lot of interest whatsoever in David Poyle going the selling route yesterday. Is that going to come back to bite the Nashville Predators as they move forward here? We'll get into that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, reacting to the trade deadline yesterday for the Nashville Predators. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Tyler from Berry Hill texted in, do you guys think John Hynes had anything to do with not selling? Could he have gone to Poyle and asked him to keep the team together to give him a chance to prove that they can do it? Now, Joe, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Somebody texted in a similar question and asked, okay, if you're Roman Josi or if you're John Hynes, do you sit down with Poyle and say, hey, 112 out of 15, give us a shot, see what we've got going here? I think you know what Roman Josi would say. I mean, he's going to want a shot. He's going to want to take a shot with this group. You would expect that out of any player, out of any leader, and I'm sure Roman Josi feels that way. John Hynes was the more interesting one to me, but I did say yesterday, like, if I'm John Hynes, the way I'm approaching this is probably, hey, I've been preaching this the whole time. Like, I've been trying to get these guys to buy in. I've not changed anything about the system, but now we've got some players that have come in, and the buy-in's been there, and this is what it looks like when you play my system the way I want you to play it, and that you're playing the way you need to play from an effort perspective every night, and now you've won 12 out of 15. Do we think that's any factor at all in David Poyle's decision not to sell yesterday at the trade deadline?
Ryan Porth?
Well, I do think it's a very interesting thought about whether or not they went to Poyle and said, give us a chance, because David Poyle has listened to that before and gone with that before after the 2018 season when they got bounced in the second round to Winnipeg. I think an interesting branch off of that question is, did David Poyle want to do right by John Hynes and give him a chance to prove himself as a coach? Because there have been a lot of things in the last 15 months that have gone the opposite way of John Hynes being able to do what he needs to do as a coach with the pandemic, the fact that he came into an awful situation when Peter Laviolette got fired, the injuries that happened earlier in the season when they really didn't have much of a training camp. The coaches were new, his assistants were new, I should say, and he's now finally getting this team to buy in. And would David Poyle have thought that he was pulling the rug out from under John Hynes if he went out and traded Mikael Granlund, who's been very successful? He's been the best forward, one of the best forwards under John Hynes. Eric Haula is starting to come into his own compared to his first couple months in a Preds uniform. I do wonder if Poyle wanted to give Hynes a fair shot at proving himself as a coach instead of continuing to have things go against Hynes as head coach. See,
to me, if anyone came to him, that had an impact here, I would think more the other side, management, or like ownership.
Yeah.
I mean, just because it is important to make the playoffs, but I mean, he knows that too. So, I mean, I think you make a good point, and that may be true. I mean, I think a lot of what's happened in the last few weeks speaks better of Hynes, and I think it speaks better of Poyle too in terms of some of his selections and some of these young guys in the system who have come up here and looked like players and like guys who may be part of the future. I just don't know that the last 15 games completely changes everything, and it kind of sounded like it did for Poyle yesterday.
Well, it did, and that was one of the interesting takeaways from David Poyle's press conference yesterday. Was there didn't appear to be a whole lot of interest in going the route of selling. You asked David Poyle about that, about his approach to the trade deadline, and how much consideration he gave to maybe going the route of selling when it comes to the trade deadline. Here's what David Poyle had to say yesterday at his press conference.
David, were you still open to the possibility of being a seller as late as today, just based on a possible offer you'd have gotten? And if not, at what point were you not open to that anymore?
In my heart, I was I was not open to it because of how I believed in this team and wanted to give them a chance. But as a manager, I was taking calls and I was listening because I think that's free, and why wouldn't I? But I had pretty well made up my mind a little while ago, based on how things were going, that it would have to be something that would be really different than anything that I had heard of or had been brought up to me that would make me want to change where we are right now.
So that was David Poyle yesterday at his press conference talking about in his heart, he didn't believe that he was going to be selling yesterday. Now, he did mention there in those comments that, he was open and listening to other teams, and, listening is free. But based on something, it would take something that he had not heard at that point for him to change his mind at that point. What was your reaction when you heard David Poile talk about, in his heart, not really all that open to being a seller yesterday?
Well, one thing I thought of was what Porth just brought up, which is 2018, because that was the big story after they lost to Winnipeg. Was those guys made an appeal, and I don't know that Poile at the time was going to just totally break things up, but maybe he was going to do a little bit more than he did, and they, that team talked him into it. The idea of give us another chance, and it kept trending the wrong way from there. But I thought of that. I mean, look, when he said "in my heart," I mean that's kind of what yesterday was to me. It was someone going with his heart. I mean, that's the headline on Vingan's column. I thought Vingan wrote a good column in The Athletic. It was critical of Poile, and basically, I don't have the headline in front of me, but went with his heart over his head. And I just think that, this is a move, yes, to give this team a chance, which I think is fair. This team has earned a chance, but I've contended all along, and I'll continue to say, there could have been some kind of recouping of assets, and while still not totally pulling the rug out from under this team. I believe that. Now, the information we don't have is exactly what people were saying on the other end of the phone. If people were saying, hey, a first, a second, whatever for Granlund, and he didn't do it, I think that's just a massive mistake on his part. But I don't know that. I don't have that information.
Yeah, we don't have that information. We're probably not going to get that information, but I would agree. If a first-round pick is on the table for Granlund, I think you've got to make that move. And obviously they did not. Whatever the compensation was, it was not good enough for David Poile to consider making a move at that point.
But it just sounded yesterday like the compensation was almost irrelevant.
It did.
It was almost secondary to this run this team is on, which, again, has been a tremendous story. I feel like, again, some people are looking at this if you think he should have sold, you're against this team. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just that, and there's more to the Poile presser yesterday that we'll get into, but if you don't believe this team can really make a run, then I think you need to – right now the bar is higher.
Yeah.
The bar is higher than get into the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
We're not at the end of a rebuild. We're not here after going through the tough times and now they're finally getting in the playoffs. Right now, you've got to try to figure out a way to get back to where the bar has been set.
Exactly.
And so if you don't think this team really has a chance to do that, then I think you are doing the big picture a disservice by not trying to recoup assets.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ty text in, with us being on the line of contention and full of injuries, why do you think Poile didn't add a player that can contribute?
So we want to buy more.
A bigger buyer.
Come on. If you're going to buy, be a buyer. Well, but yeah, I don't know. What? That's not the way to go. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. If guys do get back healthy, which maybe next week this starts happening, you have enough depth in your. Other than you may, to get where you want to get, have to have a massive change or a massive add, but that's not going to happen right now. You have enough. If you have Forsberg and Tolvin and all those guys back, you've got a lineup.
Yeah.
The way they're playing, you got a lineup that can do damage.
With how many guys are out right now? You're going to have a lot of additions coming back.
Right.
It'll be like a whole new trade deadline all over again.
So what deal would you have made maybe in the short term? Sure. In the short term, you can plug someone in and say, great, because we got a lot of really young guys in there. But what deal would you have made that would have made a big, other than a massive deal? Then what are you giving up? So it's to me it's a non-starter. But
we'll continue the discussion on the Predators when we come back. David Poile made some very interesting comments yesterday about Mattias Ekholm as well when it comes to the trade deadline and maybe his future here in Nashville. We'll do that coming up next. First, Joe, I do have to read a tweet to you. This coming from @RedWings28 on Twitter.
Uh-oh.
Do one of you hates wrestling? I bet you won't get in their faces and say that. You know what's sadder than your views on wrestling? How lame a sports radio host both of you are. Jared Stillman, and you have the Three Stooge losers of 102.5 The Game. You have really upset someone with your views on wrestling.
Oh gosh, and this Douglas Campbell, we've battled before because I made fun of the Red Wings, and he's like, "How dare you?" I'm like, dude, it's not 1997 anymore. Let it go, Doug.
Just saying.
The Three Stooges the Three Stooge losers.
You, me, and Stillman, the Three Stooge losers.
Stevie Y ain't walking through that door as a player.
Actually he is.
Yeah,
he did walk through that door.
He did walk through the door.
I said that. I was like, he's actually their GM.
By the way, I like the deal he made, too.
Yeah, pretty nice.
That's a pretty sweet deal, Stevie Y. Come on, Doug. You and I together.
Doug,
we'll relive the glory days.
We're sorry to have upset you this early in the morning. When we come back,
I'm gonna double suplex you, Doug.
On the Nashville Predators. That's coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode. You're on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porter with you on this Tuesday morning, streaming live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Periscope as well. Joe Rexrode looking great today. Had some comments yesterday about your Virginia Tech hoodie. No Virginia Tech hoodie today.
No.
Wow.
That's my fault.
I'm sorry.
I've got Rexrode doing too many things at one time.
Got my Michigan State JRN
Yeah.
journalism program T-shirt.
That's right. Represent.
I feel like when I look at the live stream, I feel like the camera's adding a couple pounds. That's just my opinion.
I think it does do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I've been told my whole life.
Oh, by the way, since we're talking about the live stream, we had a soccer banquet last night. I'm sure I'll get this out at some point.
Okay, good.
Soccer banquet last night for Brennan, and so one of the parents was awesome, and he was like, "Hey, love the show, and also it's been really cool to that you guys have done the streaming."
Yeah.
So, and I'm just completely botching this thing. This is the problem, is that I don't know how to work Twitter.
But you're on Twitter 24/7.
I know, exactly. Well, actually, the biggest problem for me right now is the Wi-Fi. But anyway, shout out to DJ Desai, and real nice parent who is a big fan of the show, and was very. He said, "Look, keep going after Stillman, you guys."
There you go.
So
we will.
He likes that. Yeah. But apparently, though, now we're going after Stillman, and we're going to have to do like the stuff because we're part of the Three Stooges with Stillman. Three Stooges of radios.
Didn't know I was in that club, but I appreciate it. It's good to be here, and glad that people
Thanks,
are
DJ.
enjoying the live streaming here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. You can check us out every single day on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Periscope as well. So make sure you continue to utilize that tool. Joe Rexrode, some very interesting comments yesterday made by David Poile regarding Mattias Ekholm. Now, as we know, Ekholm was a very popular figure this time about a month ago when it comes to the trade discussions, not only with the Predators, but around the league. Like, he was the number one target on the big board at The Athletic. Mattias Ekholm thought by many maybe could bring a gigantic return for the Nashville Predators if that's the route they decided to go. The trade deadline has come and gone. Mattias Ekholm is still here, and Poile was asked yesterday about Ekholm and about the trade deadline and the future that it could be with Ekholm here in Nashville. Here's what David Poile had to say regarding his defenseman yesterday at his press conference.
In terms of expansion, I think we have that covered. I mean, I'm not losing Mattias Ekholm in expansion, if that's what you're asking me. I've got that covered. I mean, again, Mattias has been a good player for us, and again, his name got thrown out there a lot in trade baits and different things. But I mean, my next conversation with Mattias will be after this year about how he thinks he fits into the future of this hockey club and whether he would like to be here longer, not whether we want to trade him.
So that was David Poile yesterday at his press conference. I thought, Joe, obviously some pretty strong words there, making really no secrets about what his plans are for Mattias Ekholm. And to me, and tell me whether or not you agree, like, it read to me as a guy that has seen the rumors about Mattias Ekholm and has listened to it and has watched all the chatter out there. And it sounded to me like a guy that really never had all that much interest in trading Mattias Ekholm yesterday, saying, in terms of expansion, we've got that covered. I'm not losing Mattias Ekholm in expansion, if that's what you're asking. And the next conversation I have with Ekholm will be about how he thinks into the future of this hockey club and whether he'd like to be here longer, not whether or not we want to trade him. Some pretty strong, pointed words about the future of Mattias Ekholm yesterday from David Poile.
Hands off my Mattias.
That's right.
That's what I heard there. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I hear what you're saying, but you still, like, go back 15 games. Are you sure that 15 – I mean, it sounds like this 15 games has just been a dramatic change of mindset.
Yeah.
It certainly has been I mean, it's two totally different seasons for this team, right? And I agree with what he said somewhere in there that, like, this is – what he said, one of the most confusing years for a GM, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was. I mean, are you sure that 15 games ago there wasn't a little more of, might have to do it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
mean, I would assume if the other teams around the league were doing what I think they were doing, there was probably a lot of chatter about Matthias Ekholm. Not just in the media. Like, I'm sure teams were making some calls about Matthias Ekholm, trying to gauge what it would take in terms of an offer to get him in the fold. So, now, how seriously Poyle ever considered doing it, I don't know. I mean, it sounds to me like it wasn't much of a consideration. But to your point, there was a very different narrative and a very different story about this team 15 games ago before this streak began. So maybe there was more consideration than Poyle was kind of leading on to there. But that was pretty strong. Like, in terms of press conference comments from your general manager about a specific player, that was about as strong as I can remember Poyle being about anybody. Like, he was pretty clear. He wants Matthias Ekholm to be a part of this future.
So, how does that make you feel about what their expansion draft strategy will be?
It's interesting because, I mean, obviously, Yossi's going to be protected. David Poyle said yesterday, quote, "I'm not losing Matthias Ekholm in expansion," if that's what you're asking. There's no wiggle room there. I'm not losing Matthias Ekholm in expansion. You would assume Ryan Ellis is going to be protected as well. So are you leaving Dante Fabro exposed, or are you going with 4 defensemen you're protecting again? It's interesting. I don't know.
So, yeah, I mean, and I guess even before yesterday, I guess that's the kind of the question, right? Is it Fabro or more forwards?
Yeah.
Remind me again, if they go 4-4-1, that means obviously Forsberg.
Yeah.
Probably, obviously, Arvidsson, I think.
Probably. What do you do with
Yarncroke?
Yeah. Are you leaving both Johansson and Duchesne unprotected? Both of them.
And
That's an
just
interesting
dare
question.
Seattle to take one.
That's interesting.
Well, I mean, isn't it conventional wisdom that they would have to sweeten it for them to take one?
I think so.
Why would you then worry about it?
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I think it's likely they leave both of them unprotected. I mean, you can't take both if you're Seattle. You got to pick one. So, I mean.
Kraken. Have at it, Kraken.
But who else would be unprotected that Seattle might want more?
Sissons? Would they protect?
Maybe.
Who?
I mean, it depends on who, if they decided to protect him. But
would he not be the 4th protected?
He could be.
Who else would be a candidate?
Is
for that?
Tolvanen exempt?
Tolvanen is exempt.
Okay.
That's a big key. Yeah, so Forsberg, Arvidsson.
Your boy.
Luke Cunnin?
You did just trade for Luke Cunnin.
Forsberg, Arvidsson, Yarncroke, and then either Cunnin or Sissons. But if you leave the centers unprotected, don't you think that they would take one of those guys?
I don't know, man. It depends on how badly they need to get to the floor, I guess. But if it's not necessary to take one of those two guys to get to the floor, if I'm Seattle, like, why would you take on one of those contracts right now? There's still a lot of term left on those deals. A lot.
If you leave those guys unprotected and then they don't get taken, what is that? How does that change the dynamic? Does it? I guess it's
they've got to
business in the NHL.
They've got to
right?
know now. Like, if you're Matt Duchene, you've got to know what the situation is. It's no secret. You've come in, the production's not been where they've needed it to be. I mean, last year and a half, as good as I think Ryan Johansson has been at times for the Predators, and I think he's been very good, the production is not where they've needed it to be. Now, he's played better as of late, and he's a shootout wizard, apparently. But
he's vibing, too.
He's vibing.
Vibing with
well.
you.
Exactly. So, I mean, but still, you look at the money he's being paid and the money Duchene's being paid, and the production's not where they need it to be right now. So this can't be a surprise to them if it happens.
Yeah. So it sounds like you think it's more likely that they're going to do that, 4-4-1.
After yesterday, yeah. I mean, I don't see them just leaving Dante Fabro exposed right now. I understand that he is kind of a lightning rod for some Predators fans.
Yeah, he got thrown in.
He did.
And he's looked like he got thrown in. But let's also remember his age, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
and he's a good cost right now.
He's a good cost. I still think he's going to be a good player.
Yeah, I do too.
Just because he's 22 right now and he's struggled doesn't mean that's what he is moving forward. So after yesterday, I mean, unless they're planning on trading Ryan Ellis or something, like, it sounds like they could go the 4 defenseman route again.
And then, see, to me, here's the thing with this whole thing with the trading deadline. Like, if the Preds make the playoffs, acquit themselves well in the playoffs, and re-sign Granlund, then to me, I think yesterday is a lot more palatable.
Agreed.
You know?
Yeah.
That last part's important, though.
That last part is very important.
And I think that last part has to go hand in hand with one of those guys moving, right?
You would think so, especially when you consider, like, if you hear Poyle talk, you're going to try to sign Ekholm to a contract. You would assume you're going to try to sign Forsberg to an extension as well. Like, there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to this discussion. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Bob from Antioch, who wants to weigh in. Bob, thanks for calling in to Robby and Rexrode.
Good morning, guys. I wanted to follow up what you were talking about regarding Fabro. Which of the three young defensemen, Fabro, Carrier, or Davies, do you think is the most expendable? Because I think that if you look at those three and then Ekholm, Yossi, and Ellis, I mean, they're rock solid defensively, and obviously we'll probably have to put one of those up. Which one would you say is most expendable?
Hey, thanks for the call, Bob. We appreciate it. I mean, I know the popular answer is going to be that you're really excited about Carrier and Davies moving forward, and you should be. I still think Fabro's got by far the most upside of those three guys. Like, to me, Fabro is not expendable when it comes to the discussion with those other two. Not yet. I mean,
you think Fabro has by far more upside than Carrier?
yes.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I like Carrier.
He's been good. Carrier is
It's
not
a very different path.
long-term top four defense.
It's a very different path.
Yeah.
For those two guys. But
I mean, you're talking about Fabro, a guy that's never spent any time in the minors, and Carrier, a guy that's spent maybe too much time in the minors at this point. And maybe he's been ready now for a little while and just hasn't gotten his chance.
So what you're saying is ceiling higher for Fabro.
Oh, yeah.
Still much farther from his ceiling than Carrier is.
Agreed.
I like Carrier a lot. I think he's been one of the guys this year who has just been it's another one of those guys who you've heard about for years, and it's like, okay, now you're starting to see it, which is good.
Yeah, it is good. And another potential good sign, I guess, if you're a Predators fan, is the way David Poyle feels about Mikhail Granlund. He's still here, still a part of the team. What does that mean for his future in a Nashville Predators uniform? We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Taking your thoughts on the Nashville Predators on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Joe, let's go to the text line. Got a texter that says, why does Ellis require protection with his injury history plus the length of his contract? Why not give into the youth movement on defense as well? That sounds great. To me, if you've got Ryan Ellis under contract and you let him walk for nothing in an expansion draft, that is very bad asset management.
Yeah, you could get a lot for him.
Yes.
His deal isn't crazy. I mean, it's a long deal, but it's not an insane number. Also, again, if you did that, then obviously that means you're not unloading one of your centers.
Right.
So I mean, I think that's an easy choice if you're talking about trying to change things up down the middle, although it's still hilarious to talk about that after years and years of getting to guys that you wanted to get down the middle. But regardless, if that's how to me, I don't think that that's the way to go.
If you would have told a Predators fan in 2014 that over the next 10 years they would have Matt Duchene, Ryan Johansson, and Kyle Turris walk through that door, and that you might be wanting to get rid of at least two of the three of them at one point, they'd be like, you're crazy. No way.
You'd be paying $2 million a year just to not have Kyle Turris play for you. Right. By the way, who's not in the league anymore, by the way. I mean, I'll say this, and that's a big part of the story too, right? This whole story is Turris.
Yep.
But talk about someone the entire league was wrong about like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
It was a quick fall.
You know what would be interesting to go back and listen to is Jeremy Roenick's comments in 2019 with him saying that the NHL is passing him by, that he's no longer an NHL player. And all of us were like, how can you say that?
In 2019? When in 2019?
Like right around the start of the playoffs against Dallas.
Yeah.
Roenick was like, this guy is not an NHL player anymore. And he said that multiple times on these airwaves.
I think I remember that. I don't know that it was – I don't think there was total outrage with that. Was there? Because, I remember when they lost to Dallas –
not being an NHL player anymore was
well, that's a little strong. But I remember, like, when they lost to Dallas, all I wrote about that night was Turris. Like, the Turris deal has totally –
It's an albatross, team.
Yeah, Albaturus.
There you go.
Albaturus was born that night, yes. Yeah. Anyway, so now he's out of the league. How about that? So what you're saying is that Jeremy Roenick's a visionary.
Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tyler texts in, who they leave open depends on how they feel about Ferentz as well. You can leave one defenseman open and plan to plug Ferentz in at that new spot. Now, that is a good point. David Ferentz has been signed by the Predators. He's played in one game at this point, and you're talking about a guy that I think you feel really good about. David Ferentz has finished in the top 10 of the Hobey Baker Award voting in each of the last two seasons, which, if you don't know, that's the hockey equivalent of the Heisman Trophy. So he has been very good. I think he is going to be a good NHL defenseman. I still, when it comes to protecting four, if you're going the four route with your defenseman, those are going to be the four you protect. Now, Ferentz you don't have to worry about in the expansion draft, but you're going to protect Fabro, Ellis, Ekholm, and Yossi at that point. So is Ferentz going to be your number 5 defenseman as you move forward here? It's interesting to see how the Predators might go about handling that.
Yeah. You just don't know yet. It's so early there. It's amazing that they've been able to do this for a long time, but even with Seth Jones about to become the captain in Columbus,
that or get traded next year,
and Gerard. They've had such success finding defensemen, and they continue to. So you feel good about that. However things go, that you're going to continue to fill that pipeline. Hey, I'm glad you brought up Hobey Baker real fast because I'm just all over the place. I want to congratulate UMass and Reed Lebster.
Yes, what a goal!
That's my guy. Reed Lebster is like my best friend from college. Is his nephew.
Really?
And he should have gone to Michigan State. And Michigan, he's from Grand Rapids, and they slow played him, and he went to UMass and won a natty.
Well, let me tell you
this. Good job, Reed Lebster. And yes, I know everybody talks about Red Lobster.
Reed Lebster could have a very serious endorsement opportunity coming soon.
Seriously, those cheddar biscuits, get in there, Reed.
It'd be awesome. Congratulations to UMass.
It's awesome.
Joe, speaking of the center conversation that we're having here with Duchene and with Johansson, a lot of this is going to be how do you feel about Mikael Granlund as well? And look, the Predators, they've held on to him. They've not made a decision to move on from Granlund at the deadline, even though I think you and I both feel like, without knowing exactly what the prices were, you probably could have gotten a decent return for Mikael Granlund at the deadline. The Predators elect to hold on to him, and I asked David Poile yesterday about Mikael Granlund and what his future could look like here with the Nashville Predators. Here's what David Poile had to say.
Well, it's not the right time or place, and I have not talked to Granny nor his agent, but again, he's been a terrific player for us, and if he's interested, we're interested. He's certainly played really, really well. There's a lot of things in the offseason, starting with expansion that we all have to deal with. Once again, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, but I would have to say that where we stand in terms of our relationship, his performance with our team, our happiness with him, his happiness with us, is, without exactly asking him, I would say it's probably at an all-time high. So I would certainly love to engage in that conversation with Mikael and his agent after the year to see if that's a possibility.
So David Poile yesterday confirming that he would be very interested in seeing whether or not Mikael Granlund can be a part of the plans here for the Predators as they move forward beyond this season with a contract that expires this offseason. Now, the thing about that is, especially with an offseason like this, like you're probably not signing him before the expansion draft. Like he's probably getting to free agency just because, if you sign him before, you'll have to protect him at that point. So he's probably going to get to free agency, and you know this, Joe. Like once you get to free agency in pro sports, I mean, anything can happen. Maybe you feel great about it if you're the Predators, but maybe somebody else comes in with an offer that you just can't match at that point. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I think everybody would agree that since John Hines has taken over, Granlund has been outstanding. He has been the player that the Predators thought they were getting from Minnesota when they traded for him to begin with. But to me, a part of selling this to me, if you're David Poile and the Predators and the decision to not do anything yesterday in terms of selling off some of these assets, would be to get Granlund signed in here long-term, or at least in the foreseeable future here, and to be a part of this group moving forward beyond this year. My question is, how difficult is that going to be for the Predators to accomplish with some of the other decisions, like Duchesne, like Johansson, like the future contract for Forsberg and Ekholm? How does Granlund fit into those plans? That's going to be interesting to see how they go about navigating that.
Okay, so walk me through the timeline then. So he goes to market, and it would work out to where he could be unsigned when the expansion draft happens.
Well, he will be. I mean, the expansion draft is, I think, sometime late June under the normal timeline. Like, I don't know if it's going to get pushed back or anything this year, but it'll be before free agency.
Yeah, okay, I got you. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I mean, I don't even think you can get into the mix to sign him if you don't have one of those centers taken, right?
Yeah.
So you have to try to do that. So I guess you have to try to make that happen, however you make it happen. Here's a question also on that front. Could either or both of those guys do anything between now and then that change your mind on that?
Sure.
I mean, I think Johansson changed his potential fate with what he did in the bubble.
Agreed.
I'm personally, I think I have a sunshinier view of like Duchesne than some people, and I'm not arguing the production. I am arguing right now, obviously it's a long-term injury after I thought he was playing pretty well this year. After 1 year, I mean, I think it would be kind of quick to give up on that.
Sure.
But I understand that probably one of them, if you're going to not totally, but if you're going to significantly reshape this roster, you probably have to move on from one of them.
I think there's a difference between giving up on someone and making a decision to leave them exposed, too. Like, I still think, like, if they left Matt Duchesne exposed, I have a hard time imagining Seattle taking that unless they just absolutely have to get to the floor. Or unless you can get some more assets out of the Predators to sweeten the pot. Like, I don't envision Seattle just looking at Duchesne being available and saying, yep, we'll sign up for 6 more years of that or 5 more years of that at $8 million per year. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't anticipate that being the case. So I think there's a difference between giving up on somebody and leaving them exposed in the expansion draft.
Well, that's fine. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
Sure, but what I'm saying is, like, I think this is going to be more difficult than some fans would believe if you leave Johansson and Duchesne exposed. Like, I think there's a thought out there that if you leave one of those two exposed, that they're absolutely going to be the ones selected by Seattle, and I just don't believe that. Like, I think it's going to take some doing.
It's so hard to know because it's just so you don't know who all else will be.
Right.
Do they get some sweet deal like Vegas got from Florida, or whatever? What if we just talked about this glut of young defensemen? Would you send one of them?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be an interesting decision David Poyle's going to have to make. We'll continue this discussion when we come back on the other side of the break. Taking your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode, live from the Wholesale Link Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. You're on ESPN 1025, The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 2 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, reacting to the trade deadline for the Nashville Predators. We'll have Dan Rosen from NHL.com joining us later this hour at 7:45 to talk all things NHL Trade Deadline. Chris Mason at 8:30. Predators TV analyst, our man Charles Robinson, will join us from Yahoo Sports at 9 o'clock to get into the latest with the NFL as well. So a lot still to come here today on the show, and taking your thoughts all show long on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. So, Joe, it was obvious yesterday David Poile is displaying a pretty significant amount of faith in this team with the run they've been on as of late. Winners of 12 of their last 15, taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. By the way, we'll have your opportunity for Pred's Pick to Click coming up at 8:45 today, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. So that's coming up later, your opportunity to guess the goal scorer for the Nashville Predators tonight against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But David Poile, a lot of faith in this team. The question now is that the right move? Is that the right decision for David Poile? And that is the subject of our poll question today at 1025 The Game on Twitter. Do you agree with David Poile's approach to not be a seller and be a small buyer before Monday's trade deadline? Yes or no? 104 votes are in. 54% say yes. 46% say no. So it is tightening up a little bit in the poll question.
All right, that sounds a little more reasonable. What was it right away? Like
it was
71-29.
71-29.
Yeah, I didn't buy that. Spoiled sample. Small sample.
Yeah, so we'll continue to keep you monitored on the poll question. Again, you can vote on that at 1025 The Game on Twitter. So it was interesting yesterday looking at David Poile because I had several takeaways from the press conference. And I thought it was interesting from this respect. Like David Poile, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, there didn't seem to be much willingness to sell heading into yesterday. And it's interesting, like you look at the spot, and he was asked about this as well. I mean, I think they've won 3 games against the teams in front of them when you talk about Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Florida. So there's not been a ton of success against those teams that you would see in the first round of the playoffs. And yet, David Poile seems to really believe that there's something different about this team, that this run that they've been on, winning 12 out of 15, isn't, fool's gold. It's not just a hot streak, that there has been a discernible change with this group, and this is more along the lines of what they are rather than what we saw at the beginning of the season. How much do you, Joe Rexrode, buy into that this is more of what they are moving forward rather than just a complete hot streak that they've been on? And if it is, how dangerous does that make them coming down the stretch here?
Well, okay, when you say moving forward, you're just talking this year.
Yes.
Not like –
yes.
Yeah. Look, I think that they've definitely changed. I think they're much better. They've figured out some things. There's a lot to like about what's happened. It has also been tied to, I think, unsustainable, outstanding goaltending. Not that UC Saros can't be really good, but I mean, you're not going to be at 960 over a long period of time,
no.
Right? So now he's 930 this year, which is what tops in the league at this point. So. Or right around there. I think it's real. I think it's a little bit of a leap of faith to say now they're going to start beating Tampa Bay and Carolina and Florida. No, I mean, they haven't been able to do that. Again, maybe their record would be different if this team, the way it's playing, could go back to some of those games earlier. But also, it's a very banged-up team. And, I mean, Poile, I think, was very honest, and I think he usually is. And he basically said, well, you can rule everybody out this week, and I don't know beyond that.
Yeah.
So, again, like that's not encouraging for what this lineup might look like. But by the time you get these guys back, you may be behind again. And you can still be playing well. And maybe UC Saros comes down to earth a little bit, and you're still banged up, and you're playing tougher teams, and you're out of the playoffs. And then what are we – I mean,
yeah.
the whole thing is – it's quite a leap of faith.
Well, and despite that, despite all the injuries, despite everything you just thrown out there, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that David Poile feels that way, and he's got a belief in this group moving forward. And he talked about that yesterday, kind of the change in mindset that's taken place as he views this team. Here's what Nashville Predators general manager David Poile had to say.
We got off to such a poor start, and there was so much written about the Preds and what we're going to do, and and this and that, and whether I was making calls or people were calling me, there was a lot. And then, as I said, we started winning, and there was less need for people to call me and less need for me to want to call other people. Like I said, I'm just trying to do my job, and I've talked to all 31 teams several times. I mean, I would do that if we were in first place or last place, and it's just because you're exchanging information all the time. But the need or the desire to make changes became less and less each game that we played, and the integration of a new or a younger player and their performance and how we played, almost regardless of the result, just changed a lot in terms of what we thought in the organization as to what the possible changes or direction that we should go.
So that was David Poile yesterday at his press conference. And, Joe, what I took away from those comments is I think David Poile believes that this group has found an identity of the way they need to play. And I think he believes that they found that regardless of who's in there, which is, I mean, that's great if that's true. Like if you get the way they've been playing as of late in terms of the relentlessness on the forecheck and just how bought in they seem to be, if that happens and you can keep that going and then get some of the skill back in your lineup, like Tolvanen, like Forsberg, like Duchesne, some of these guys that have been out, I think you feel great about that moving forward, because if you combine the way they've played and the commitment to playing a certain way defensively that they've had, and then you throw in a little bit more skill, like I think you like that formula if you're David Poile. Again, I keep going back to the goaltending. You're at a .965 save percentage over the last stretch here. How much different does the quote-unquote buy-in or the way you've been playing or the forecheck, how much different does all that look if Saros slips a little bit? Like, is that enough to turn some of these wins into losses? Like, that to me would be what, if I'm a Predators fan, I'd be extremely worried about at this point. Like, yeah, Saros has been great, and maybe he does. Maybe he just keeps it up, and he just kind of rides this thing all the way through here. But you would have to think at some point he is going to cool off a little bit. And if he does, what sort of a difference does that make for the Predators in their bottom line?
Yeah. Well, the way this season has gone all over the place, maybe it turns into Pecorino comes back in as the number one and he leads you to the cup. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's all on the table. But another thing when you talk about concerns, so on my tweet line, Pringles, who's another one of my sports dads, and also shout out, by the way, to Holly Pring, great basketball coach in Nolensville. Pringles says, I'm worried that when this team is back to full strength, it will be worse. And I think
that's a popular thought.
I think so, too. And I get it. I mean, I think when you talk about buy-in, the thing about that, though, is, like, you talk about buy-in, it's hard for me to believe that anyone's coming in here and not immediately glomming onto what has been happening with the way this team is playing, right?
I believe that now, yes.
Yeah. So I get the concern, but I think there's a good chance that as people come back, you're just adding skill and offensive punch without detracting from style of play. I mean, that would be, and if not, I think John Hines probably says, okay, I'll go back to what my lineup was before.
I would hope so. I mean, I think it's what you got to do if you're John Hines. Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ryan in Nashville text in to Joe. I guess the 14% of us so-called bots were right about the Predators being buyers yesterday.
You bots.
Ryan taking a little jab
you
at
trolling
you right
bots, you. Yeah, technically you're right. It was okay. We call this a soft sell. What was this? Was this like a
extraordinarily soft buy?
This like a dollar store buy?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like when you're at the register and I'll take a
candy bar?
pack of gum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Skittles.
Impulse buy.
Yeah.
The Skittles look pretty good. I'll just buy those.
Yeah.
Yeah, like taking a penny out of the jar.
Wow. Maybe so.
But hey, again, it's amazing the variety of opinions on this player.
Make sure you're tuning in later on the show as we reveal a keyword for you to text into the game line for your chance to win the T-Mobile Hockey Home Gate giveaway, a Dos Equis prize pack including a case of beer, dessert from Nothing But Cakes, a T-Mobile prize pack, and food provided by 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. We'll have that opportunity coming up for you a little bit later here in the show. We'll continue the discussion on David Poile and the Nashville Predators when we come back, taking your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. It's easy to forget that there are people in our community who are starving. Hunger in the United States is at an all-time high due to COVID-19, and people who have never had to wait in line for food have to do so now. So people like you and me need to help during the Feeding America Radiothon tomorrow. Help by donating at radiocares.org or text radio to 662-266, and a donation link will be sent to your phone. So we'll have that for you tomorrow coming up. You can help out there.
And all the local donations for that benefit the Second Harvest Food Bank.
There you go. So we'll have that opportunity coming up for tomorrow, and maybe something we don't think about now in terms of the effects of COVID-19, but certainly some people going hungry out there as well. So if you're able to help with that, please consider doing so as we bring that to you tomorrow. Joe, discussing right now the Nashville Predators and David Poyle's approach to the trading deadline yesterday, making the decision, I guess, to have the soft buy or the dollar store buy, as you've termed it, at the deadline. Let's go to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Logan texts in, first time this season I've been excited to watch the Preds play Tampa. Is Tanner Jeannot going to be in the lineup again tonight? We'll find out. I would assume yes, since
he better be.
There's not going to be, I think, any bodies coming back. I would assume Tanner Jeannot's back in there tonight, but how about that? The first time Logan's excited to watch the Predators play the Lightning.
I'm surprised.
I would say Saturday you should have been excited.
That's what I was just going to say. I'm surprised you weren't excited Saturday the way that things have been going, but it's a big one. And, yeah, Tanner Jeannot, Yakov Trenin, bowling balls on the ice.
Yeah.
Fun to watch. Again, like, what night was it?
Sunday night.
Sunday night, Dallas.
Yep.
A team with 13 shots in 55 minutes of hockey. I was highly entertained by that team. How do you do that? How do you pull that off?
That's a good question.
By hitting the crap out of people all night.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe texts in, there's something special with this team that does remind me of the 2017 run. Hopefully we're getting injuries out of the way in the front and not in the playoffs like in 2017. Saros is playing out of his head for sure, but each year there's a goalie that puts a team on his shoulders and steals wins. We have firsthand witnessed the coming out party of what we hoped Saros would be.
Well, Poyle threw out a 2017 reference.
He did?
Yesterday. So this is going to be the Binnington story in St. Louis, yeah?
Maybe. Saros is playing really well. Maybe he rides it all the way to the cup.
Just keeps it going. I don't know.
Said this last time on Preds Insiders. Saros, for them to make a run of the playoffs, it feels like he's going to have to be almost better than what Pekka Rinne was in 2017. And Pekka Rinne was incredible. But like that team was really well built.
Yep. And
they had expectations of going far into the playoffs before the season even started. Whereas I almost feel like UC Saros has to play like Yaroslav Halak did in 2010, where Yaroslav Halak with Montreal elevated Montreal way beyond their potential.
Yep.
And they took down Washington. They took down Pittsburgh in the first two rounds of that postseason because Halak was so stinking good in clutch games in those series, where you look at that Canadiens roster and you wonder how they were able to go through a President's Trophy winner in Washington or the defending champs in Pittsburgh.
What if Forsberg comes back and he's red hot, and Tolvanen comes back and he just picks up right where he left off, and Duchesne comes back and they figure out how to work that with Granlund, and he's just, on a tear, and all the other things are the way they've been during this stretch, and you get totally healthy, and it's just a matter of building on this with better talent and offensive skill.
I mean, it changes it. That's a big question to me, though. Like, we've seen this veteran group, when they've all been together, they've disappointed for 2 years in a row. Now, that's changed. You've had some younger guys come in, and I think that has infused some energy, and I would hope that has a lasting effect on this lineup, and I would hope that if it doesn't, if you're John Hines, you're not very hesitant to change things up quickly, because they would need to be changed at that point. But we spent a lot of time here on this show talking about, what if this, what if that, what if a certain player hits their potential, and it's not happened yet. It's difficult for me to believe that everything's all of a sudden just magically going to work out.
Right. But so what has happened is 12 wins in 15 games and a collective approach and effort and style that apparently just completely changed the GM's mind on where to go with this stuff.
Yep.
I do wonder if this week will change some of the fans' minds on this team. I mean, Tampa Bay, Carolina, next 3 games.
It's a pretty good stretch right there.
If they win 2 of these next 3, do you feel like the fans will start, or more fans will start to buy in this team, thinking that this team could actually do something in the playoffs?
And the bigger question would be, maybe do Joe and I start to buy into this team?
Perhaps.
If they win 2 of the next 3. I don't know.
Well, I bought again. This is like, it's like this has to be framed like, because you think Poyle should have sold, you don't believe in the team.
Right.
I reject that. This has been one of the most fun stretches of watching this team for me in 5 years of watching it closely, and I think it's been terrific. And all credit due to John Hines and these players. It's just what's the actual ceiling? I don't know. I think it's sports, and even to get here is. I never would have guessed we'd be here.
I would agree.
So I hesitate to say, here's the ceiling for sure. I don't know.
Right.
We don't know. This could be a Bennington story. What a story it would be. But I think in all likelihood, we have seen this team against the top 3 teams. It is different, but is it different enough to flip that around to be able to win a playoff series against one of those teams?
I don't know.
I have my doubts.
I do as well. But that's the route that David Poyle has chosen here, and it was interesting. Like, he used the phrase, keeping the team together yesterday. And if you've watched this Predators team for any length of time, you're familiar with that. As you said, that was the story after 2018 when you win the President's Trophy, and they kept the team together to come back the next year. And that was really the start of, I guess, the downturn for this group of you win the division the next year, but it never really felt right. You're out in the first round again in the playoffs to Dallas. And then you fast forward to last year, and Peter Laviolette's fired. And the beginning of this year, like keeping the team together in 2018, you understood it at the time. Is that the right move now? And David Poyle talked about that yesterday, his decision to keep this group together and to move forward here with the group that they have. Here's what David Poyle had to say.
I think we're basically in the playoffs right now because we're in the playoffs to make the playoffs this year. Well, we have to win games on a regular basis just to get there. And I think the experience that we get, especially with our younger players, and the chemistry that we have on our club, our coaching staff, it just all makes more sense to me for what to keep the team together versus what I could have gotten, a couple of draft choices or what have you. I'm not trying to play that down, but that's my answer. I just think that what we have going right now, what we can learn, what the players, how they develop, and let's get our first goal here is let's just get to the playoffs, and then let's see what happens.
So there was one part of that I found really interesting at the time, and that was talking about the couple of draft picks, and David Poyle didn't want to minimize that return,
but he did.
Talked about what he could learn about this group and the younger players coming in as they tried to make a run for the playoffs here. I do wonder how much that factored into David Poyle's decision of, all right, you've had younger players coming in. They've played really well up until this point. How do they respond to high-pressure situations? And if they respond well to it, maybe that totally changes the way you feel about your trajectory moving forward here if you're the Predators.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, look, this sport I feel like is very much – there are some clear better teams, and there's like we know Tampa Bay is going to be there. But then again, 2 years ago, we knew Tampa Bay was going to be there, and what happened to them in the first round.
Yep.
This is very much a get into the postseason, and, man, you just don't know. And sometimes you get that lightning in a bottle thing, and a team that you don't think can make a run does make a run. It happens a lot. So you have to keep that in mind with this, even though I think clearly this team does not match up with the very best in the league right now. Crazier things have happened than this team, if it got healthy, making a run. But I did like the thing that stood out to me about those comments was draft picks and what have you. But he's like, I'm not trying to minimize it, but that's exactly what it sounded like to me. And I think the long-term view should be you really need to replenish at some point. And is this the year to go for it?
So now that they've decided not to do that, and they've decided not to make any moves at the deadline in terms of selling, what does that mean for their future? Are they a contender? David Poyle had some interesting comments about that yesterday as well. We'll react to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, talking all things Nashville Predators. We'll have Dan Rosen from NHL.com coming up at 7:45 to talk all things NHL Trade Deadline. So looking forward to that conversation with Dan. And as always, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe got a texter on the text line that says, I don't understand why not selling is such a big deal. It's not like we don't have young players to look forward to. We've got a lot of young talent, so there was no need to sell, in my opinion. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were talking during the break, like even like Eric Holla, for example. Like, look, like the Granlund thing, I think that story is going to be completed this summer.
Agreed.
And I think that he has definitely – it's amazing, you know, that they sort of just kind of, okay, we'll take you back this year, and now it's turned out to be he could be a key part of their future. Could be. So let's see how that plays out. But, like, even trading a Holla for, like, a fourth-rounder, if you could have gotten a fourth-rounder, is that some franchise-turning move? No. But I feel like it's at least – you recoup something, and it's an acknowledgement, you know, that you're not where you want to be, and you're thinking multi-year, turn this around, get back, not even turn it around because you're playing well right now, but get back to where you want to be.
Well, and also, like, I would agree with the texter. They've got some young players that you feel good about. Does that mean you stop collecting assets that you feel good about? Like, I don't understand that.
It's like a constant stream.
It's never a bad idea to get as many assets as you can possibly have. So, look, I'm not saying that the Predators have absolutely made the wrong move here to not sell. Do I agree with it? No. Would I have sold? Yes, I would have. Now, maybe they continue on this run, and you look back, you know, a month and a half from now and say, yeah, that was absolutely the right move to keep this thing together, because here they are. They're still marching through the playoffs here. But I keep coming back to this, and I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. The question you've got to ask and answer, if you're a Predators fan or if you're David Poile, is do you believe this team is a Stanley Cup contender? If you do, then I have no problem going for it. If you don't, you've got to keep the big picture in mind, and you've got to keep the assets in mind that you can manage and that you can get out of a deadline. And David Poile was asked yesterday about whether or not he believes this team is a Stanley Cup contender and had some interesting comments. Here's what David Poile had to say.
I think that's really reaching for it to say that we're a Stanley Cup contender right now. I mean, we need to make the playoffs first. I mean, that would be a significant step from where we were to get there. It's already been pointed out very correctly that the top three teams in our division have been dominant in terms of us playing against them, and we've got to get there, and we've got to be able to beat those teams, to get into the playoffs, and then have the confidence that we can beat them in the playoffs. So we got a long way to go. I'm not talking Stanley Cup right now because that's not on the radar right now. The only thing is that we have 13 games to go to play the best that we can do to get in the playoffs. That may happen. I think it's going to happen, but it may not happen. So all I know is that we've made a lot of changes with our club. A lot of things are going the right direction. A lot of younger players are in there. And how I felt at the beginning of the season, or probably more realistically a month into the season, versus how I feel today, is like night and day. Much, much better, much more confident about the future, much more clarity about where we are with our team.
So David Poile saying he's much more confident about the future, much more clarity about where they are as a team. But also, Joe, at the beginning of that clip, saying, I would probably say calling us a Stanley Cup contender is a reach, which left me kind of looking around yesterday saying, all right, well, if that's the case, what are you doing at the deadline? Like, why is selling not more of a possibility that you entertained at the deadline if you feel that way?
Right. I mean, the whole press conference, because that was my second question, and it led me to that. Like, okay, so let's lay it out. Like, how good, like, what do you think the ceiling is? If you're David Poile, like, are you saying that, like, you think this team can make a run? And he sort of poo-pooed that, you know, like, oh, no, we're not talking about that. And, yeah, I'm with you. Like, here's the thing, you know, when you get some assets in a particular year, even if you think you're close, you're not there, but you're not that far away, well, then when you're really a buyer, maybe next year or the year after, now you have more to offer. I mean, it's not just to collect assets in like a long-term build, you know, to hopefully have more young players come up. It's to have more things to offer when you really are in a position to buy.
Yeah.
I mean, this wasn't really a buy, right? It'll go down as that, but
right.
It wasn't. So, I mean, I was a bit confused by that too, because it's like there's a lot of pressure that was applied to the rest of the season yesterday by what happened. But then that was sort of like reining everything in. But to me, I don't know why you are approaching it this way if you don't think that's at least possible.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kelton text in, it's hard to sell that to the team. Like Poyle said, the players earned a chance to make this run. I get it. I don't. Maybe this is just me. I'm not worried about selling anything to this team. Like, if I'm David Poyle, that boat left the dock a long time ago. Like, you kept things together after 2018. I understand why. You won the President's Trophy, you lost in 7 games to a really good hockey team in Winnipeg. I understand why you kept things together. But in keeping things together, it was then on the players to hold up their end of the bargain, and they didn't. So this idea that David Poyle somehow owes the players or owes the people in that locker room like an explanation for what he does or tries to sell what he does, I'm sorry, he doesn't. This locker room has not earned that. Now, this run has been great. Well, you're talking about a 15-game stretch with a bigger picture that's been a conversation for 3 years. I'm sorry. Like that to me is not a part of this conversation if I'm David Poyle. He doesn't owe that locker room anything. No,
he did say he used the word reward, so I think that's how he's looking at it. Like this month, I'm rewarding it. So like go ahead and go get it. I mean, if you look at the trajectory, so I mean to me the high point is not just the Stanley Cup final run, but also the President's Trophy the whole next year. Okay, right?
Yeah.
So the big picture is from there. You're a steady decline, really. You go to, you won the division, but that was a frustrating year, certainly compared to the year before. You get really handled physically, especially by Dallas. Then, last year, obviously, you're in a qualifying series, and then this year. So I think Poyle must look at it like rock bottom was a month ago, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hope if you're him, if you're the Preds, like rock bottom from the end of or from 18 before you get into the Winnipeg series to a month ago, you went like this, clearly sinking. I mean, like pretty strong downward trajectory.
Now you're trending back up
for a month.
Yeah. Is it sustainable? Like that's the thing. But I just reject this idea that they've gone on this run here, and David Poyle and management just owes it to these players to keep things together. Like that's not how you operate in professional sports.
If you, in general, if you do your job like that as a professional sports GM, it's not going to go well for you.
No. So, I get it. And again, I'm not saying that they're absolutely wrong to not go this route and to not sell. But at the end of the day, like if you go out, you keep this team together, and let's just say you make the playoffs. If you lose in the first round, if you lose in the second round, like is it worth it? I don't know. I think different people would have different answers to that question. I'm just throwing that question out. Like, what's it going to take now for this to be worth it if you're David Poyle to keep this thing together? Maybe it's as simple as re-signing Granlund next year. I don't know.
That's for me. For me, it is you get in the playoffs, which is going to be difficult. You're really going to have to play really well against this schedule, and you at least are competitive against whoever you play in the first round, and you re-sign Granlund. If that all happens, then I think it's fine.
Yeah. That's a lot of steps.
If you just lose him for nothing and any of the other stuff doesn't happen, then I think this was a mistake. So there you go.
When we come back, we will be joined by Dan Rosen from NHL.com. We'll get hot and heavy into all things NHL Trade Deadline with him. That's coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing all things NHL Trade Deadline. And to help us do that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our good friend Dan Rosen from NHL.com. Dan, what's going on, brother? How are we doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on. We're past the deadline. Let's look ahead now, all right?
Absolutely. You're exactly right. So, Dan, we'll get a lot to the league and what happened around the league with the deadline coming up, but I do want to get your thoughts on the Predators and what they've done or not done at the deadline. They keep Mattias Ekholm. Granlund they keep in the fold as well. They make a small buy going out and bringing in Erik Gudbranson. What do you think of the decision by David Poile to basically stand pat at the trade deadline? And what do you think of the Predators as they approach the final 13 games of the season now?
You know what? I mean, look, I like the idea here from David Poile because you don't want to go out and, sell. They're in a playoff spot. I think that might have changed over the past 3 weeks with the play of UC Saros and whatnot. Maybe 3 weeks ago, if the deadline was then, you might be talking about a different thing here for the Nashville Predators. But you obviously don't want to go sell because you're in a playoff spot, but how realistic are you? You know what I mean? Like, how realistic do you believe that this team can go out and really do some damage and really make an impact in the playoffs in that division, which is just a meat grinder at the top? And with Carolina, Tampa, and Florida separated by 2 points, and they're all at least 9 ahead of Nashville, who's played the most games of all of them, So it's certainly, I think, the right move here by David Poile. Don't sell, but don't go out and trade in first-round picks or second-round picks or top prospects and whatnot. Nice addition there. Erik Gudbranson brings size to the back end. Good insurance policy for injury, whatever it may be. But, it's not the biggest defense that you got there in Nashville, so he adds a little size and snarl back there. And I like Ekholm, and I loved what David said about Ekholm. He said everybody's talking about the trade, like where are we going to trade him? The next conversation I have with this guy is, does he want to stay? Can we re-sign him? And I like that because Mattias Ekholm fits. He's 30 years old, and he's still got a lot of game left. And you got Yossi and Ellis signed for a number of years. They're also 30 years old. So this team is still in a win-now mode, but in this division, I just don't see it with the team right now. So I think you get in, you don't mortgage the future. You take your chances. You see how it goes, and you hope some of your guys come back healthy at some point too, and gives you a better chance. But I thought it was the right play for David Poile. Don't sell, but don't really be significant buyers either.
So what do you think, Dan, this team could do? Obviously, they've won 12 of 15, very banged up. UC Saros, 960, that's tough to sustain. But they do have some very good players who at some point we think will come back. I mean, what do you think this team could do in the postseason?
Yeah, they're a dangerous team. They are. If everybody's healthy, they're a dangerous team. They're a team that we look at and we say, you know what, they're good. I mean, that's how everybody was looking at them at the start of the season. So, and I think UC Saros' play has really been impressive. He's taken over that spot. Pekka's there still, but it's really now UC, it's UC's net. 950 is very difficult to sustain, as is continuing to play the way they're playing with winning all the games, 12 and 15, without a full complement of players. I mean, you see, Duchesne and Forsberg on that injured list, and you're like, okay, how long can it last without these two guys in the lineup? So you hope they come back and they do, that they can get healthy and whatnot. But even healthy, I mean, look at it around. Are they better than Carolina? Are they better than Tampa? I don't see it. Maybe Florida, but then for them to hit Florida, then Florida's going to have to win the division, in the first round. I just don't see. I think Carolina's very deep. They're especially deep on the back end. They can score. They have a terrific power play, lights out power play. And by the way, what are they? What is the Carolina Hurricanes, just as an aside? They're one of those teams that doesn't do the drop pass on the power play, and they're really good on the power play. What does that tell you?
Thank you very much.
So, okay, beyond that, and Tampa's just so good, and they got better with David Savard on the right side of their D. So I don't think that they can win a first-round series, the Predators. If healthy, if Saros is terrific, if all things fall their way, if their power play clicks and their PK is good, then yeah, maybe they can come out of a 7-game series. But I think you'd find a hard press to find somebody to pick them to win a 7-game series over Carolina or Tampa at this point.
Dan Rosen from NHL.com on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So, Dan, as you look at the deadline as a whole, I mean, obviously it's not quite as active as we've seen in years past. Did any team in your mind establish themselves as clearly the favorite? Any team move the needle enough to where you think, okay, this team has absolutely established themselves in a division as the team to beat?
No, not really. I thought Toronto was the team to beat in the North, and I think they made the moves to separate themselves to do that. There'd be the one team I would look at, but they were already that team to beat, in my opinion. With they got a 6-point lead in that division, same amount of games played as the Jets, and they're playing really well. They've won 6 in a row. I like the additions of Nick Foligno and the insurance policy that David Rittich brings. So I like that, what Toronto did. So they may have moved the needle a little bit, but they were already ahead in the needle, if you ask me. So they're there. Otherwise, I thought it was just good teams got better. I love the moves that Colorado and Vegas made. Small, subtle moves. Colorado gets Carl Soderberg, just another center you can throw out there, another depth centerman, win some face-offs here and there and do a couple of things and kill some penalties and whatnot. You guys know this, you can't have enough good centers, when you get into the playoffs. And Vegas, the Matthias Janmark move, I mean, he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. He can do so many different things. And they only pay him 25% of his salary, and it was a weird 3-team trade and all that stuff. But they get a good player in there who was important for Dallas last year in their run to the Stanley Cup Final. So I really like those moves. I don't think one puts them ahead of the other. I think they're clearly, obviously, the best 2 teams in that division, and maybe the best 2 teams in the National Hockey League, and they're better now with those moves. The one thing that was interesting to me was to look in the East Division, guys. So you saw the Islanders make their moves early to get Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac, maybe trying to push themselves ahead in that division. Well, then Boston comes back and gets Taylor Hall, and Pittsburgh comes back and gets Jeff Carter, and then Washington makes the splash and gets Anthony Mantha from the Detroit Red Wings. So it's a little bit of a trading arms race there from the top 4 teams in the East. I don't know if it changes my opinion on how that's going to finish. In my opinion, I still think the Islanders are the best team in that division, and we'll see how that kind of plays out because they have the most sure thing in net. Their goaltending is the best among the teams. Boston's got Rask and Halak healthy, that changes, but Boston's not going to win that division or finish first. So I just, to answer your question, I just don't think it was, one team separating, but I think a lot of good teams got better.
Yeah, you mentioned a deal I wanted to ask you about, Dan, the Washington-Detroit deal. What do you think about that for both sides? How big of a risk is that for Brian McClellan?
You know what? It's an overpay. It really, it's an overpay to get a player like Anthony Mantha. But what you're getting is cap certainty. You're getting the cost certainty. He's signed through the 23-24 season. So you're not getting a rental. You're not even getting a guy who's got one more year. You're getting a guy who's now going to be part of your core. And the other thing is, you guys saw it in Nashville too. Peter Laviolette sometimes just finds this guy that he doesn't really like that much. And I think Jacob Vrana was that guy. I think he was his Kyle Turris. And it just didn't work out. I don't know if there was, a little oil and water there with Vrana and Laviolette, and Panik didn't really work out either with them or the Caps in general. So they looked at it and they said, we believe we're better with Anthony Mantha and Michael Raffle, who they got from the Flyers for a 5th-round pick, than we are with Jacob Vrana and Richard Panik right now. Okay, so they believe that. So what do? Well, you got to pay the price to get better. You pay the draft pick price, a 1st, a 2nd, and a 5th to get those 2 players. So in the short term, they're better. Anthony Mantha is a big, powerful right wing, 6'5", 225, big dude, and he's going to roll over the boards after Tom Wilson and maybe after TJ Oshie. So that's a lot for another team to handle. And I think Anthony Mantha can be a really good player, as he was in Detroit last year, but playing the role he'll play in Washington, which is going to be a middle 6 role, but playing around some pretty good players. I think that will help his game a lot, and I think it is a risk because it's a lot to pay, but the reward is they're going for the Stanley Cup again right now and next year and the year after that too. So they got a player they think can help them do it.
Dan, last thing for you here. Taylor Hall going to the Boston Bruins, and he was a guy, as I'm sure you can imagine, was a popular topic of conversation here when he was a free agent, the fit with John Hines and all that stuff, and the success he had in New Jersey. It did not go well for Taylor Hall in Buffalo. It's not gone well for really anybody in Buffalo this year. What is Taylor Hall? What sort of a player are the Bruins getting in him? What does he have left in the tank?
Taylor Hall is a player who lacks confidence and freely admits that, but when he plays well and he's got his confidence back, he is an elite skater. He's a strong skater and a great playmaker. People look at him and say, well, he's going to score a lot of goals. He scored a lot of goals that 1 year with the Devils, 39 goals, but he has not necessarily been a dynamic goal scorer in his career. He's been a dynamic playmaker. He's got a lot more assists than he does goals in his career, and that's the player that the Bruins are getting. If Taylor Hall can get a quick start here, get his confidence back and get a quick start with Boston, he is going to be such a dangerous player for the Bruins, because this is the first time, guys, that Taylor Hall is going to a team where he doesn't have to be the man. He was the number 1 pick in Edmonton. You got to be the man. And it was before Connor McDavid, right? He goes to New Jersey, big-time trade. He's the best player. You got to be the man. And he was. He goes to Arizona in a trade, blockbuster type of deal. You got to be the man. He was okay. He wasn't the man. And then he goes to Buffalo, and he had the man with him in Jack Eichel, but Jack got hurt, and now it's on Taylor. And he couldn't be the man. Now he's going to go play in Boston. Brad Marchand's going to play ahead of him. He's got Patrice Bergeron there. He's likely going to play on a line with David Krejci. Just go play. This is all Taylor has to do, is just go play his game. He's going to get favorable matchups because Marchand takes a lot of those tougher matchups. I think it could be a really, really great fit for Taylor Hall, not just now, but for the future too, if it all works out. And he's got to get off to a good start to get that confidence back. But if he does, I think the Bruins are a way better team with Taylor Hall in their lineup.
Dan Rosen from NHL.com has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Dan, great stuff as always, brother. Appreciate you taking time to join us.
Anytime, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. Dan Rosen, one of the best in the business. Love that guy and love his analysis on NHL.com. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Nashville Predators, get back into the trade deadline. Did the Predators make the right decision yesterday at the deadline to not sell? We'll discuss that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. You're on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 3 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porter with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. And taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Chris Mason, Predators TV analyst, joining us at 8:30. We'll get into his thoughts on the trade deadline and the Nashville Predators moving forward, taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. Preds Pick to Click, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka, coming up at 8:45 as well. So your opportunity to participate later this hour. Joe, interesting stuff from Dan Rosen in the last segment. He talked about the Predators saying, you're right there, you're in a playoff spot right now, so you don't want to sell, but also don't want to mortgage the future either. I think there are a lot of Predators fans that feel that way, where you just say, all right, let's let this thing ride and see what happens here. That's not the way I would have approached it. I would have still probably gone with a soft sell of some degree, but that's not the way the Predators have gone here. And as a matter of fact, we kind of made fun of it yesterday here on the show. We talked about the poll question we put up. If you're a Predators fan, would you rather see them sell? Would you rather see them stand pat? Or would you rather see them buy? I think the final count at the end of the show was 13%. So 13% said they wanted to see the Predators buy yesterday. And technically, Joe Rexrode, they did. Eric Gudbranson coming in. The Predators make an addition yesterday at the trade deadline.
The troll bots were right.
They were.
Good job, troll bots. Yeah, Rosen was just sort of like, yeah, you don't want to sell. I would disagree with that. I think if you can sell, you could find a way to sell and not totally disrupt everything. Now, if we're just talking about Mikael Granlund, especially the way this team is banged up right now, especially we've been told nothing happened in this week on that front. And if you know for sure nothing's happening this week, you don't know for sure it's happening next week either. So,
sure,
in terms of if it's really important to make the playoffs.
Keep in mind, there's only 13 games left, so there's not that many weeks left.
Right. So now you're into, 5 games into it, and you're not going to be different? I understand. Like, if you took Granlund out of that, you might just be punting. But you could have traded someone else, too.
Yeah.
Eric Hall,
Now, and again, who knows what the return was going to be, and who knows what happens there. But it is interesting to see kind of the reaction to this. And David Poile had a lot to say yesterday, but one of the themes, I think, pretty quickly was that there didn't appear to be a ton of interest in selling as the Predators approached the deadline yesterday at 2 p.m. Central Time. And David Poile spoke about that on a question that you asked him yesterday at the press conference. Here's what Predators GM David Poile had to say.
David, were you still open to the possibility of being a seller as late as today, just based on a possible offer you'd have gotten? And if not, at what point were you not open to that anymore?
In my heart, I was I was not open to it because of how I believed in this team and wanted to give them a chance. But as a manager, I was taking calls and I was listening because I think that's free, and why wouldn't I? But I had pretty well made up my mind a little while ago, based on how things were going, that it would have to be something that would be really different than anything that I had heard of or had been brought up to me that would make me want to change where we are right now.
So that was David Poile yesterday at the press conference, deciding, with his heart, didn't really want to sell yesterday. Now, he was open to listening, and certainly he mentioned yesterday in the press conference he's been in contact with all 31 teams for the last couple of weeks now, and he would do that whether he was in first place or whether he was in last place. But you factor all those pieces together, it did not sound like there was much of an appetite at all yesterday for David Poile and the Predators to consider selling.
No, and sounds like there wasn't much of one for at least a little while. And because that's the thing. You could, and we talked about this going in, hey, the price may not be good.
Yeah.
And sometimes if the price is not right and the market is what it is, although actually the overall movement at the trade deadline exceeded my expectations, I would say, in the end. There was quite a few teams.
There was a late push yesterday. Yeah, that was pretty good.
It was a late push. But it sounded to me like not that like no price could have swayed him, but that he's been resolved for some time before the deadline that he just didn't want to break this thing up.
The dread line, he said.
Did I just say the dread line?
Yes, you
it
did.
was kind of the dread line. Especially now, maybe for some people, the dread line. But I don't know. It sounded that way, and I mean, to me, that's just. I get it. I also, it's almost like it would be important symbolically to make a move. I mean, it's not like if you got a 4th-round pick for Eric Hall, that's going to turn around your frame. Now, you could get a Victor Arvidsson. You got him in the 4th round, right? You could get a good player with a pick like that. But, like, just symbolically sort of making the statement, like, this is not where I want it to be, and I know that we've been buying for years, and we have to, at some point, flip that around and add assets rather than continue to let them go the other way. So it wouldn't be some big deal to trade like Eric Halla for a 4th-round pick if you could have done that. But I still think there would have been, for the fan base, and I think for media, I think there would have been some level of, okay, at least there's an understanding, like you got to flip it around at some point. But listen to David Poyle yesterday. I mean, one thing he said was basically like, it's good to be a buyer. You want to be a buyer. You want to have your chips in on the table. Like buying, even if it's this level of buy, is a sign of success.
Yeah. And
I just like again, like getting to the playoffs is no more like some great thing for this. To the credit,
not where the standard is.
To the credit, I just said to the credit. To the credit of the Preds, the bar has been raised.
It has.
But when the bar is raised now, it's no longer some big, accomplishment to just get into the playoffs. It's an accomplishment for this team from where it was. If it gets in, it's a heck of a story for this team. For the organization, the bar is higher.
Christopher on Periscope says, it seems like Poyle's waiting until the end of the season to make the more important moves. What are your thoughts on that? Granlund, Ellis, etc. could all be moved, but Ekholm could be re-signed. So we did say this heading into the deadline. Like, it's not like everything has got to be figured out by yesterday. And I think that's important to keep in mind when it comes to this discussion. And look, like I have said time and time again, I thought the Predators should sell. But if it ends up working out where you don't sell, even if you don't make a deep run in the playoffs and you're able to retain Mikael Granlund, is it the world's biggest deal at the end of the day? No. Like, it works out okay. You keep Granlund, and then you've got some decisions to make about your future moving forward here. But I do wonder, like, how much of this from David Poyle's viewpoint is, all right, I feel really good about these young players, and I'm not going to change much of anything heading into next year, and how much room is still on the table depending on what happens for maybe some significant moves in the offseason.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the deadline is really, it's about your expiring contracts, because if you don't move your expiring contracts, then you may lose those players and get nothing rather than getting something like you could have. And at times it can be like the Ekholm situation. You may have found somebody who was desperate to get Ekholm and thought he was the final piece, and you get a huge haul, maybe a bigger haul at the deadline than you would get in the offseason, maybe. But, I mean, we moved on from the Ekholm idea a while ago, right? And clearly, you can move on entirely from that now.
Yeah, that's,
you can move
apparently
the heck
that's not
on.
going to happen. David Poyle, very strong yesterday about that.
I'm in support of that. I mean, I'm in support of if Ekholm wants to be here long term, that's great for you.
I agree.
You've got a proven, excellent defenseman, and all these draft picks don't necessarily amount to anything. But I just thought he was kind of dismissive, too, of just the not draft picks and whatnot. Like, well, those do lead to players. Hey, the thing is, I mean, this season also, I think, has been a friendly, a brighter, sunnier view of some of the choices that have been made in recent years.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got some guys who are showing that they can play, which is great. So have more picks to get more guys. And then when you really are going for it, if you can get there in a relatively short amount of time, now you have more assets to trade.
So now we know roughly what the lineup is now moving forward, and depending on when they get some players back, there's going to be some really interesting decisions that John Hines and his coaching staff have to make coming up here. So what would a lineup look like if everyone's healthy? Like, who's playing right now for the Nashville Predators? We'll discuss that when we come back. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. .1025 The Game and T-Mobile have teamed up to give away a hockey home gating party, and it's time to text the word GAME to 615-737-1025. That's GAME to 615-737-1025. Now to enter for a chance to win a Dos Equis prize pack, which includes a case of beer, dessert from Nothing But Cakes, a T-Mobile prize pack, and food provided by 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. You must be 21 or older to enter. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. So, Joe, we now know that there's not going to be any more movement for the Predators with the trade deadline coming and going, and this creates an interesting situation. Now, it's a little bit less interesting this week because David Poile confirming yesterday that none of the injured guys all that close to coming back, not going to be coming back this week. So you're not really going to see, I don't think, all that much lineup shuffling going around this week for the Predators. But let's kind of play this exercise out here. Like, as they get healthy and hopefully for their sake, as they make a run in the playoffs, like, you're going to have some decisions to make if you're John Hynes, determining who to play and, like, who to be in the lineup on a nightly basis. We've talked about the young players that have come in, and they've done a great job at this point. But you've also got some veterans that have proven it at this level before, that are highly paid in some cases, and that you only got 12 spots at forward. I mean, you can't play everybody. You've only got 6 on defense. You can't play everybody there either. It's going to be very fascinating to see how John Hines and the staff handles this as they move forward. So I have put together a lineup that, assuming everyone is healthy, that I would put out there at least to start. And I want to throw out this disclaimer. Like, if this doesn't work quickly, like if you're John Hines, we talk sometimes about coaches having too quick of a hook. I think this might be a case where a quick hook would be needed if you don't get the play you're looking for out of some of these guys. Oh, a couple. I mean, if it's a playoff series, maybe one. I mean, you might need to change some things around. But this is the lineup that I have put together for the 18 skaters when everyone is healthy that I would put out there. I've got Forsberg, Johansson, and Järnkrok on the first line. I've got Tolvanen, keeping Granlund at center, moving Duchesne to wing on the second line. I have got Nick Cousins, Erik Haula, Victor Arvidsson on the third line, and I've got Trennan, Sissons, and Luke Kunin on the fourth line. What do you think of that forward group I've thrown out there?
You are just going to disrespect Olivier like this?
Well, I did want to ask y'all about that. He's out for 4 to 6 weeks. So is he a part of this or is he not?
I didn't consider him on this.
Okay. Because I did think about that. Like, if he's in there, that's a decision you got to make too. But 4 to 6 weeks, like, is he going to be a part of this? That's an interesting question.
So, by the way, I was supposed to do this too. Is that right?
You could react to mine if you want to.
Well, I'll tell you one. It's interesting the way you have it with Arvidsson, with Cousins and Haula. That's interesting. I would make the case to keep it how we saw the other night on that fourth line.
You love you some Tanner Jeannot.
I mean, he's just blasting people.
But how do you take Kunin out right now?
Yeah.
He's come back in. It's been great. Like, you're not taking Trennan out.
This is another reason why the trade would have been good. You know, Hall is out of there, and it's easier.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, you've got some tough decisions, and we talked about the youth movement. Like, I'm looking at this lineup I've got forward. Tolvanen's young. Trennan's young. That's about it in terms of the youth. I mean, I guess if you want to include Luke Kunin in there, you can, but I don't have – I mean, Olivier's hurt, so that changes the conversation. I don't have Pitlick in there. I don't have Jeannot in there either.
You also and just to make sure, you do not have Grimaldi anywhere.
I do not have Grimaldi playing right now.
I was surprised you put Järnkrok on the top line.
I'm not putting the Jofa line back together. I know people would be tempted to do that.
I'm not either.
I'm not doing that.
So why is that such a just absolute no?
It just hasn't worked.
Yeah.
It has worked. It's worked before, but it's not worked with any sort of consistency lately.
Only worked in the bubble.
Yeah.
But it worked really well in the bubble.
Right, but nothing else
did. How far
did.
that gets?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, there was a time where it was not even a conversation. You're putting that line together. I think we're past that time. I just do. So I'm putting your boy on the top line, Järnkrok. He can play any role for this team. And I think a lot of this is because I want to keep Granlund where he's playing right now. Like, I think he's done a really good job as your second-line center. I know Duchesne is paid to be your second-line center, and you've got to put Duchesne somewhere when he comes back. But I think it would be interesting. Could playing with Granlund and Tolvanen get Duchesne going? Like, could that be something that makes him productive? I think it's interesting to think about.
What about
that line? Intrigues me a lot.
Yeah. What about? It's probably too finesse. But what about Tolvanen, Granlund, Arvidsson? Duchesne.
It's a really small line.
It's a small line. Duchesne with Johansson and Forsberg.
Maybe. You kicking your boy out of the top 6? Järnkrok going back down to the third line?
Hey, like you said, the thing that's great about Järnkrok is he has no ego.
That's true. He does.
He'll go wherever you want him to go.
It's true.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think we've seen 1 second of Johansson and Duchesne together, right?
If we have, it's not been very much.
Not at even strength.
Right. Yeah, I'm talking even strength.
Even strength.
Yeah.
So, I mean that's a route you could go. Like, let me ask you, like, are you taking Granlund out of center right now, putting him back on the wing?
I mean, Granlund has been at his best in a Preds uniform at center, and that's been in the last month.
I agree.
He's been a terrific two-way player. He's just been – I mean, the other night I watched him a lot. Man, he's just an all-around – he does everything.
He's been more trustworthy at center than Duchesne has been.
I would agree.
Since both arrived in Nashville.
Like, I was putting this lineup together. I don't know how you can move Granlund right now. Like, just with the way he's playing, I don't know how you can move him. And maybe you have to. Like, maybe Duchesne just has to play center. I don't know. But I'm not moving Granlund out of that spot.
Sounds like you wouldn't have traded him, too.
I do love Mikael Granlund. I still would have traded him. Let's go to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, Tolvanen on the first line, no questions.
That's how I've got it.
Okay.
With Forsberg and Johansson?
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm trying to spread the love a little bit. Now, Tolvanen and Forsberg together is pretty enticing.
It is pretty lethal.
Yes.
So what does your lineup look like?
So what's your next line then?
So Forsberg, Johansson, Tolvanen, the first line. Second line would be Duchesne, Granlund, and Järnkrok.
Okay. So same top six, just different order.
Correct. Third line would be Arvidsson, Haula, and Cunnin. And then fourth line would be Trennan, Sissons, and Cousins.
Okay. So you've got the same 12.
Just
different order.
jumbled
Just
up.
put Cousins down and Cunnin up.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So on D,
I've got Tanner Jeannot in my lineup, so that's what I'd like.
Tanner Jeannot looked really good.
I'd
the
like
other
to
night.
put that on the record right
There
now.
you go. Maybe he'll play again tonight. We'll have to see. Look, on D, I think it's interesting on D too, because if you get some bodies back and are healthy, you're going to probably have some veterans that are sitting out, would be my guess. Like, here's what my defense looks like. I've got Roman Josi and Carrier as my top pair. I've got Ekholm and Ellis staying together. They're together right now. I like that. I think those two together are really good. And I've got, at this moment, Benning and Fabro, although I don't know that either one of them can play the left side. But those are the two. If you're asking me the 6 defensemen I would ice, those are the 6 that I would put out there.
I think I would agree on the 6. That's interesting that you don't want to see Josi Ellis back together, huh?
No. I mean, they were great, but I like to the point where, like, Roman Josi to me, he's so good, you can play him with anybody. And, like, he played with Carrier a little bit. I know Ekholm played with Carrier a little bit. Carrier looked good. So, like, to me, Carrier coming in, I don't know that it's your long-term answer in your top 4 on D, but he held his own to the point where you don't feel like you're just going to get crushed every time when they're out there. Like, I would add that together. And maybe you do go Josi Ellis and then just put Carrier back with Ekholm. I don't know. But I think Carrier played well enough where you at least feel good about you're just not going to get worked with him out there, especially if he's with a Josi or an Ekholm.
Fabro looked fine with Josi too.
He did. Yep.
And that goes to your point of you can put almost anybody with Josi and they're going to look fine.
Right.
Almost the way that Shea Weber was.
Exactly.
In a Predators uniform.
So what does your D look like?
I will go with Josi and Ellis as the top pair, and then Ekholm and Carrier. I thought they looked really good together when both were healthy. And then I would I agree with you. The Benning-Fabro pair kind of feels like a square peg in a round hole.
It does.
But those are the 5th and 6th best defensemen on that group.
Agreed. My question would be, like, could either one of them play left? Like, Ekholm can play anywhere. Like, he can play on the left. He can play on the right. That seems like it should be a common thing to do. It is not. It is very difficult to do.
If neither can go, who's the left-handed defenseman that you put in there?
Would you rather have Ben Harper in there, or would you rather have Mark Borowiecki in there?
Probably Borowiecki.
Where does Eric Gudbranson factor into this?
Nowhere near the top 6.
Okay, I'm just wondering. Just checking.
Hey, it's the big acquisition.
I'm just checking.
I like Ben Harper.
I think he's been fine. I don't know. That to me is interesting. Like, if neither one of those two can play on the left, and you've got to sit either Benning or Fabro, you're probably sitting Benning at that point. Do you put Harper in, or do you put Borowiecki in? Playoffs, I think it depends on your matchup too. Like, if you're going up against a team like Tampa, maybe it's Borowiecki. If you're going up against Carolina, who's just got Blazers everywhere, maybe more of a fleet of foot defenseman works in that spot.
No one's mentioned Davies yet. No one's mentioned
Davies. To
Ferentz.
me, I think he's clearly an 8. I don't know enough about Ferentz yet to really determine where I put him. So, but
I mean, Davies is probably 10.
he probably is at this point with Goodbranson.
Or 11.
coming in. Yeah.
Right.
So you like Goodbranson then?
That's right. Way to go, Porter.
Sure.
There you go.
I got some blobs to show you.
When we come back, we'll continue the discussion on the Predators. Preds TV analyst Chris Mason will join us. That's coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. It's that time of the week here on Robby and Rexrode. Time for our man Chris Mason, Predators TV analyst, brought to you by Coleman Tractor, Tennessee's largest Kubota dealer, and Smoky Mountain Tops, the exclusive partner of the Nashville Predators. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com. Chris Mason joining us now here on the show on our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. C. Mace, what's going on, brother? How we doing?
Doing great. Just getting ready for the big morning, big production meeting to talk about all things hockey, Preds, that is.
Absolutely.
How you guys doing?
Yeah, we are doing well. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. So, C. Mace, the trade deadline has come and gone. David Poile making a minor move yesterday, bringing in Eric Gudbranson, but otherwise basically standing pat at the deadline. What did you think of that? What did you think of that decision by the Predators? And what do you think of now their prospects here that we know what their lineup is going to look like moving ahead here for the final 13 games of the regular season?
I like that, and that's actually kind of what I suspected. And I'll just maybe touch on Gudbranson first, because I think bringing in a guy like Eric Gudbranson, I watch that last game against Dallas, and although the Preds are able to obviously answer back anybody physically now, and I think they've established that part of their game, and they're a team to be reckoned with in that department. I still feel like teams are taking a little too many liberties with Roman Josi physically, and I don't know what the pairings are going to be or whether Gudbranson will be in right away or who they'll be playing with. But if perchance you end up playing with Roman Josi when he comes in here, other teams are going to think a little bit differently before they finish their checks or take liberties with Roman Josi if they have Gudbranson out there. So I think this is it's a good, big, physical veteran guy that is respected and feared in this league. So I like that. I like that move. And with all the injuries on defense and the guys that they're just getting back and everything, I think to get that depth was a good move. And then to stay pat at the deadline, this is a team that's got something going on right now. There's a feeling, there's something special. And you can, everybody, in that dressing room and around that organization can feel it. And if you move any pieces out or you take away from that situation or you bring too many pieces in, I think that can really alter, that kind of feeling that they have in the locker room. So I like that he didn't do anything. There's a lot of, you still want to go in a certain direction after the season, you can still make those moves around the draft or, when you're posturing for the expansion draft or whatever. I think this team's got something really special right now, and I kind of suspected David wouldn't do much at the trade deadline, and I think that's the reason why.
Well, you just mentioned, Chris, pieces leaving or coming in. I mean, right now you've got very good chemistry and cohesion, and like you said, something special. 12 wins, 15 games, the consistency of play, all that. Is there any concern when guys get healthy, as much as you want some of these guys to get back healthy, that the chemistry could be disrupted?
I think so. I think that's got to be taken into consideration because, it's not like when someone's been out for a long time just because they're, making $8 million or just because they were slotted in a certain spot before or whatever the case may be, that they're automatically back into the lineup because the guys that, and John Hines, he stated this right from when he got here, and I give him a lot of credit because I hear a lot of coaches say this and then they don't back it up, but that your ice time is earned, and if you don't play the right way and you don't play the way that, we've instilled our systems that you won't play. And he's done that. He's shown that he'll take guys' ice away no matter who you are, and he's given opportunities to guys that will, and if you play that way, you're going to get the opportunity. But the way they're going right now, it's on. I don't know who you take out of the lineup. I mean, there's obviously, you can tweak things night to night or based on opponent, but when you have guys right now and everyone's really contributing and they fit a certain role, it's tough to replace that with somebody that might not fit that role. So it's going to be a lot of juggling. It's going to be tough for John Hines to do, but I'm sure, right now with the way things are going, you don't want to make too many big changes all at once, that's for sure.
Predators TV analyst Chris Mason on the line with us, brought to you by Coleman Tractor and by Smoky Mountain Tops. And see, Mace, you know this. I mean, this time a month ago, Matthias Ekholm was involved in just about every trade rumor out there and on the big boards on all these different sites. And the trade deadline comes and goes. The Predators turn things around. They've won 12 out of 15, and Ekholm is still here. And I found it interesting yesterday, David Poile with some really strong comments on Matthias Ekholm, saying basically, they're not going to lose Matthias Ekholm in expansion. They've got that covered, and that his next conversation with Ekholm is going to be about, how long he wants to be here, not whether or not he wants to trade Ekholm. What did you think of that decision to keep Ekholm around, and also just how strong Poile was yesterday in his comments on Ekholm?
Well, I love that because, I think Matthias Ekholm this season, especially when both Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis were out of the lineup, he really showed his worth and his value. And I think everybody always has known that he's been such a great leader. In the dressing room, on the ice, he plays, obviously a very physical style. He's skilled. He's got all the, checks all the boxes. But I think when, you're talking about our defense core, he often gets mentioned after, it always goes Yossi and then Ellis and then Ekholm, and I think now, although they may have known that inside the organizational structure and inside the dressing room, but he's such a massive part of that turnaround, and to have all those young kids come up, and he's kind of the elder statesman and the guy that everybody, I feel, looked to in that situation to lead the way, and the way he performed, not only performed, but the way that he carried himself and the composure and the leadership that it just seemed like, he was meant for that type of a role. When all the chips are down, and we all thought, I was one of them. I was like, oh man, they're gonna have to make some moves. They're gonna have to, start to rebuild and get rid of some of these guys and try to, collect some assets and all this kind of stuff. And what he did during that stretch to me was just beyond impressive. And I think that, how could you ever let a guy like that go, in my opinion? So I was happy to hear that about Matthias Ekholm, because it's more than just the level of play. There's other intangibles, his leadership and, the quality of person that he is. So that was pretty nice to hear, and I'm sure he liked to hear that too.
Well, speaking of those qualities, C. Mace, now I'm going to lift something from our friend Jeremy K. Gover to ask you a question. This is a really interesting point Gover made. So Adam Vingan asked Pekka Rinne about the idea of being traded on March 15th. The Preds are 12-3 since then. So this run happened, maybe coincidentally since then. We know what UC Saros has done on the ice in this stretch, C. Mace, but do you think there's anything to that, to those comments by Pekka at that time, saying basically he was willing to go down with the ship here, that I don't know, galvanize the team?
Well, I think, it sends a message to somebody, like when, other players might think, oh man, we're going to blow it up. I want out of here. I want to go somewhere, and try to win or whatever the situation. You look at a guy like Pekka who has earned that right. And if he went in the office and said, hey, David, I love my time here. I'm obviously, the Nashville Predators are everything to me, but I just want a chance just to try to win at the end of the season. David would have done anything in his power to make that happen. But the fact that, especially at that point in time when it looked like there was no chance that anything good was going to happen, that we're talking, just what we're talking about, trading everybody and starting to get assets for all the players that are movable. And for him to say that, I mean, that sums up who Pekka Rinne is. I'll tell you, he's the most loyal person. He'll probably be the first jersey up in the rafters for the Nashville Predators. And I think it is a powerful statement when, you got a young kid and they're like, man, this guy could try to go anywhere, try to win a cup, every player's dream, but he wants to stay here because he loves his team and the city so much. I think it does impact people, and it makes them kind of rethink their thinking. So, it's pretty cool and not surprising, as we all know Pekka and what a quality human being he is. So, but it could have easily been done, in the fact that he was willing to go down with the ship, like you said. I don't know if he'll play again next year, if he'll, reevaluate things. I'm sure that's how it'll go. He'll reevaluate after the end of the year and see how he feels. But I just think, I just admire the guy even more.
C-Mace, last thing for you here. The Predators taking on the Lightning tonight. I thought a really impressive response against the Stars the other day, especially physically. I mean, Trennan and Jeannot out there just blowing people up the whole game. What did you think of that, and what did you think of the opportunity tonight to respond to a Tampa Bay team where I thought the Predators played pretty well against the Lightning on Saturday?
Yeah, I thought they outplayed the Lightning. I think Vasilevsky had an awesome game, and it's not often that he has to maybe be the guy all the time. They obviously score a lot of goals, and sometimes you play well and you run into a hot goaltender, and you're the better team and you don't win. That's we have all seen that many times. The Preds have been on the other end of that, where their goaltenders have stolen the game. But I really thought they quite handedly outplayed the Tampa Bay Lightning throughout that hockey game, and they got a lot of chances, a lot of grade A. They got to the net hard. They didn't give up a ton, a couple lucky goals there, but then you have, the next game they come out in Dallas, and to me, the intangible of that team's always been, I always feel Dallas had the edge in the physicality in that series. So what we saw in the playoffs or sometimes during the season series, if games get rough, but Dallas has always kind of had that edge. And then you have, you lose Olivier, so you bring in McCarron, he gets suspended, and all of a sudden, we get to see Tanner Jeannot again. And you might have been a bit nervous the first time, or, that was kind of still when the team was kind of still going back and forth. And then this kid just absolutely destroys half of Dallas's lineup. Like, it was unbelievable. That hit on that first one on Alexiak when he was coming up the ice. Like, he saw it coming. He set it up because I'm sure you guys all saw on Twitter, they sent, clips of him doing that in Moose Jaw.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, Alexiak, the guy's an absolute monster, and Jeannot just, he brings, it was unbelievable. I was so impressed, and the kid's got skill. He's lighting up the American League, too. So this could be, he's got a good opportunity here right now with Olivier out and, McCarron suspended. But if he keeps playing like that, no way they can keep that kid out of the lineup. And he just, again, he's like, he's on there with Trennan too. Like I love Trennan, but man, and that line and those types of players make huge impacts in the game, especially when you're playing against Dallas. Because once that started happening, the shift in the physicality and the cheap shots on Dallas's end kind of slowed down a bit. Because it's not the same Preds team as we've had the last few years. We all know that, and I like the element and the way these guys are playing and sticking together out there.
Preds TV analyst Chris Mason has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by Coleman Tractor, Tennessee's largest Kubota dealer, and Smoky Mountain Tops, the exclusive partner of the Nashville Predators. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com. C-Mace, great stuff as always, my friend. Appreciate you taking time to join us.
Okay, thanks, fellas. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. When we come back, it is time for Preds Pick to Click, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. The Predators taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. Be the first caller at 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. You can guess a goal scorer for tonight's game, and if you get it right, you'll win a prize pack brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. We'll do that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
front, and the score!
Who's going to find the back of the net in tonight's Preds game? Robby and Rexrode make their picks to click and welcome a listener to do the same. Pick to Click is brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka, the official vodka of the NHL.
Ah, yes, it is time for Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. The Predators taking on the reigning Stanley Cup champions tonight in the Tampa Bay Lightning. Puck drop at 7 o'clock, pregame at 6 o'clock here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. The standings are as such. The listeners and Joe Rexrode, each with 6 correct answers in this competition. Ryan Porth with 2 correct answers. Robbie Stanley bringing up the rear with 1 correct answer in this competition. So Monday.com and welcome in Don, who is today's participant in Preds Pick to Click. Don, what's going on, man? Thanks for calling in to Robby and Rexrode.
Oh, not bad. How are you?
We are doing well. So, Don, the Predators taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. Who is your goal scorer for the Predators in this game?
Mikhail Granlund's got to prove why he wasn't traded.
I like it. Don going with Mikhail Granlund in this game. Don, good luck to you. We appreciate you calling in.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Don, I like that strategy. It's the day after the trade deadline. Granlund has been kept around by the Predators, and Don going with Granlund to prove that he belongs here and to justify this pick. So, immediately, Don going with Granlund the game after the trade deadline.
I mean, really, if you think about it, it's time for a hattie, right?
Yeah. I guess
Granlund, it's a hat trick or go.
So this has become a little bit more interesting now because we had gotten to the place earlier this season where Forsberg was going to be the first pick, and then Tolvanen was going to be the pick after that. And now Tolvanen's out of the lineup. Forsberg is out of the lineup. So it requires a little bit more thinking, a little bit more creativity on that front. Don going with Granlund. Joe Rexrode, of the three of us, you've got the first pick today. Who is your pick to click in tonight's game for the Predators against Tampa Bay?
I mean, do I stray from what I've been doing?
I don't know. You've done it at this point at least like 4 or 5 times in a row.
And I guess maybe one time it's worked. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where the only reason I would move off Yarncroke is to help you guys, to make it interesting.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'm in a battle. I'm in the battle with the listeners. I mean, that's the thing is like the options aren't abundant.
There's
right
not
now.
a lot.
So yeah, I'll go with Yarncroke.
So Joe Rexrode selecting Calle Yarncroke in today's competition. Ryan Porth has the second selection today among the three of us in the competition. And Don, our listener, going with Mikhail Granlund. Joe Rexrode going with Calle Yarncroke. Ryan Porth, your selection today in Preds Pick to Click, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka.
Well, I could go with Tanner Jeannot. I could go with Colton Sissons.
Here we go with
There's
Porth
a lot
again,
of options
listing
again.
the entire roster.
I am just kidding.
Okay.
I'm going with
Porth going Vrabel on us, listing the depth chart.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go with a gut feel pick on this.
Okay.
And not an obvious pick. I'm going with Luke Cunnin.
Ooh.
Luke Cunnin's been playing better. He's had some chances even when he hasn't been scoring. I'm going with number 11.
I like that. Luke Cunnin, the selection by Ryan Porth. Give me, in this competition, I feel like I kind of have to do this because apparently we're vibing now. Give me Johansson. Give me Johansson in the competition. It's time for him to score at 5-on-5. I feel like today is going to be the day.
We're vibing, Robby.
We are vibing. Give me Johansson in this competition. I think he gets one in there tonight.
Go score 5 goals.
Maybe 5. What do you think of that?
You and Slow Joe are joined at the hip for the rest of the year. You're vibing together.
I don't know if that's good or not.
It was more like Medium Joe the other night in the shootout.
He kind of sped up a little bit.
It was.
Now, just for the record, shootout goals don't count in this competition.
Right. That's good. But 3-on-3 goals do.
3-on-3 goals do count in this competition.
Very important to note.
That's important to note. So, that is today's edition of Preds Pick to Click, brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. Don, our listener, selecting Mikhail Granlund. Joe Rexrode with Old Reliable, going with Calle Yarncroke in the competition. Ryan Porth selecting Luke Cunnin, a little bit off the board. Robbie Stanley going with Ryan Johansson tonight in the Predators contest against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Gentlemen, good luck to you.
And to you as well. Breaking news, by the way, Vanderbilt is hiring a new women's basketball coach.
Ooh, okay.
Shea Ralph.
Shea Ralph.
And Mike tomorrow of the New London. Let me make sure I get this paper right. The New London Daily News in Connecticut reported this first. Shea Ralph, UConn. People who follow UConn basketball remember Shea Ralph. She was a great point guard for Gino in the late 90s. It was a huge recruiting battle with Pat Summitt and Gino.
He's had a few of those.
Yes. I think she had like multiple ACL tears, came back from them, won it all, I think, in 2000. Has been with him for a long time, has been considered, a top candidate to get a head coaching job. And so there you go. The new direction for Vanderbilt women's basketball.
So Shea Ralph, the hire for Vanderbilt women's basketball, coming from UConn. I'm interested to see how that goes. I mean, there was a lot of hype the last time around with the coaching hire that was made. I'm interested to see how she can do stepping in here to a program that, it's somewhat tough to judge last year just based on the season being halted due to COVID. But I think fair to say the last few years not been very pretty for Vanderbilt women's basketball.
When you make that hype comment, you don't go all Stillman on me now.
What?
Well, no, because Jared.
It wasn't just
Jared
you.
Likes to.
It wasn't just you.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I liked the Stephanie White hire. It didn't work out. The difference between the two is certainly college basketball experience, coaching experience.
Yes.
Now that still no head coaching experience for Shea Ralph, so it's still a bit of a leap of faith in terms of you haven't seen this person run a program, but certainly, I mean, you're talking about someone who has been a big part of a program that wins at the highest level, and so it's a quite different hire from Stephanie White, who of course was successful in a short period of time in the WNBA, but hadn't done it at this level.
So that's the breaking news on the Vanderbilt front. Joe, the Predators taking on Tampa Bay tonight. They played them on Saturday as well. I thought played pretty well, just could not solve Andre Vasilevsky. What do you want to see? What do you need to see from the Predators tonight, the first game after the trade deadline?
That's the thing. It's a lot of – it's like, hey, we're going all in, not trading anyone, and now go play Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
By the way, has Tampa Bay just been hanging out here for a few days?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonder if they went to Topgolf.
Maybe so.
Actually, no, they wouldn't have, right? Because they can't.
Yeah,
they can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's a big one. And I think if the Preds play like they did Saturday, I think they'll have a chance. I mean, you got to finish some chances. I mean, Vasilevsky was great in that game, and they left a couple on the table. But I liked how they played. I thought that was as well as they've played against Tampa Bay this year, arguably.
Yeah.
Do it again. Play like you've been playing. And find a way because, look, even the other night, it was a great game and a lot of credit due for the grit and certainly the physicality they played with against Dallas. The chances were few and far between. I mean, you got to take advantage when you get them.
Starting Monday, listen to the game every weekday for your chance to win $1,000. It's the game's 1K payday. Listen for the keywords at 9, noon, and at 3 o'clock. And when you hear it, go to thegamenashville.com and enter the keyword for a shot at $1,000. We'll have that way coming up starting on Monday. When we come back, our man Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will join us. We'll get into the latest with all things NFL. The draft approaching very quickly as well, almost in a little bit over 2 weeks now from the NFL draft. All that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. And it's that time of the week. We go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our good friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, what's going on, man? How we doing?
Doing well. How you guys doing this morning?
We are doing great. Appreciate you taking time to join us. Charles, I want to start with the announcement yesterday. Julian Edelman, looks like his career is coming to an end after 12 years with the Patriots, retiring. I have a couple questions for you. Number one, is he really done? Because I kind of feel like people are halfway expecting him to end up at Tampa Bay at some point with Tom Brady. And number two, would you like to insert yourself in this argument that is raging throughout Twitter about whether or not Julian Edelman is a Hall of Famer?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, look, if you listen to Edelman's camp, it sounds like he's done. It sounds like the knee, I don't want to say it's degenerative, but it had gotten to the point last year where he felt like, even with the repair and rest, it just was not getting any better, and that his his ability to compete at a high level isn't really going to change. I would tend to think that Tom Brady's treating it like a retirement, and Bill Belichick's treating it like a retirement. Different situation than Rob Gronkowski. So I made a joke yesterday about the flights to Tampa, which
I saw it.
I don't think you could ever rule that out, but I mean, initially, obviously that's what you think. But I think he's done. I think he's hanging it up. As far as the Hall of Fame thing, I don't have a Hall of Fame vote. This is probably one of the times I'm happy I don't have to, argue with people about whether or not I would vote for him. I think it all depends on how you quantify the postseason versus the regular season. His regular season numbers are okay. I think he had a pretty good, solid regular season career. It's going to look worse and worse as time moves on, just because wide receiver stats in general are going to be bloated, and including, slot position receivers. But he was a guy who factored into a lot of really major postseason runs, won a lot of rings with the Patriots. And so I think, if you're a Hall of Fame voter, you have to quantify whether or not that postseason career carries enough to make him a Hall of Fame caliber player. I think he was a really good slot receiver. I think he's a guy who helped move the slot position becoming more of a weapon in the NFL, a mismatch weapon forward. I got a lot of, flack for making that statement. Everybody wants to argue, the 15 other slot receivers that they think are more deserving. But, I mean, he's a really good player. To me, there's an element of that Patriots dynasty that I think is going to fall in sort of the, when you go back to, say, like the 72 Dolphins and that undefeated season, you always hear, people who are longtime Hall of Fame voters would say, well, here are all these really good players that played on that Dolphins team and during that era where the Dolphins were really great, who didn't make it into the Hall of Fame because they were really good but maybe not elite. I think there's going to be questions about really good players for the Patriots over the expanse of that 20-year run who maybe aren't considered elite, but there will be arguments about whether or not there should be more Patriots in the Hall of Fame long term.
So, Charles, you were all over Clowney to the Browns almost happening before, and now it looks like it maybe is happening. My question on this is, well, first of all, is it? But also, I just can't wait to see what someone is going to pay Jadeveon Clowney at this point. Do you have any idea?
I think it's going to happen. I don't. Let me put it this way: I have a very good inkling that as long as he passes the physical, it's going to happen. And I think what happened with the Cleveland Browns is they pursued him last year. Obviously, there were, the Titans, amongst other teams, were interested. I'm very confident Cleveland put the best offer on the table in terms of money for Jadeveon Clowney. He turned that down, and ultimately it's going to be a massive financial mistake for him because, I think what a team like Cleveland's going to end up paying him now probably in the range of, I'd say, like $8 million, for a single season of work. And then, there'll be the ability to probably get a couple $1 million worth of incentives in there to push it up if, meeting sack totals or playoff type stuff. But I think the money on him at this point is he's probably an $8 million 1 year kind of deal player where you're waiting to see, whether or not the knee bounces back. If he's in the door, say in April, and he's part of your off-season program, your training program, all the things that you want to do, you get him into the defensive scheme and sort of what the expectations are. So maybe he's not freelancing as much as he did. Look at with the Titans. I spoke to somebody in the Titans organization. The interesting thing to me was nobody killed him inside the Titans organization, which I thought was interesting because, you have a bad sour note kind of a season, and usually people are lining up to shell a player. I think from what I heard, there was frustration that, physically he wasn't quite in football shape, and it led to some frustration on his part, some freelancing. He wasn't always doing everything, what his general assignment was on the defense. He was pressing to make plays, which you do see, players who are like, hey, I'm here on a 1 year deal. I got to make some plays. I got to put some numbers up. And I think that knee plagued him a lot more than at least I realized last season with the Titans, and obviously ended his year. So I think for the Browns, it's, let's take a look. We really like this guy. And in their thought process, I can tell you the Browns, Andrew Berry was a guy who was with the Philadelphia Eagles when the Eagles considered trading for Clowney when Clowney was with the Houston Texans. I think Andrew Berry has seen a ton of film on him from Houston to Seattle and then Tennessee. And I think he's of the mind that if you get this guy in a room with, Myles Garrett, you get him into a defensive room with Pat McKinley, some of these other guys that are on 1 year deals, there's an element of guys to sort of play off each other, the competitive nature. And I know there's some disagreement about, hey, maybe Clowney was at his best when Watt wasn't always on the field with the Houston Texans. I can tell you the Texans don't feel that way. The Texans never felt like he was a better player without Watt on the field. I think they felt like, when they could stack those two guys, it made a really big difference. And I think that's kind of what the Browns would think with Myles Garrett. They need someone on that front. Look, they had Olivier Vernon last year. I think they feel like Clowney, healthy, is a better player than Olivier Vernon.
Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And Charles, it really has been amazing to watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this offseason maintain this group that went out and won the Super Bowl last year, and now adding to it as well. And look, I don't know what the reaction to this around the league is going to be because the running back room already has Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette. But then you bring Giovanni Bernard into the mix as well, which right. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I feel like could be a huge weapon for Brady in the passing game out of the backfield. What do you think of that fit and that decision by Tampa Bay to bring him in?
Yeah, he's more of a James White kind of player. I'll be completely honest with you. I haven't had a chance to watch the cut-ups with the Bengals. The offensive line was bad. I think he was a guy who probably was looked to pick up some blitz pickups more than you would want a player of Giovanni Bernard's size, to have to handle things like that. I've heard he did well in a lot of those situations. When you look at the cut-ups, I haven't seen them myself. But, anytime you have a player who, like I said, is sort of James White-ish, meaning somebody who can, he can do a lot of things out of the backfield, particularly catch the football and be an effective matchup like that. I don't know if I'd say a Deion Lewis, but he's cut in that sort of similar fashion, smaller, faster, gives defenses something extra to think about in terms of who is the right player to match up with him. And, he'll catch the football when Tom Brady throws it to him. So, I just thought when I saw it, I'm like, of course, like this is ridiculous. They give, if I looked at Tampa Bay's setup, I never really liked, Ronald Jones had his moments. There's no question. He bounced back, obviously, from having a really poor rookie season, has become more of sort of what the Buccaneers expected, when they picked him up. But, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, I never felt like they had that, like I said, James White sort of Deion Lewis element in the backfield. I do think this is the guy that gives him that. And there are a lot of people who are going to say, hey, it's been a few years since he's been any good. All right, well, show me the Bengals team and show me who's been, just an absolute great player over the last couple of years, particularly any player whose performance was predicated on an offensive line that has been terrible for years. So I think this is the perfect kind of signing for the Buccaneers. He's a guy who can come in. He's going to be in a rotation type of style in that backfield. He'll get plenty of rest and always be fresh and be a matchup player. And they just keep getting richer. I look at the NFC and it's ridiculous to me how many other problems there are with contenders in the NFC, and yet we see what Tampa's done. Even, look, Russell Wilson and all the drama that's going on in Seattle, that's not good for that organization. The Rams lost a couple key pieces of their secondary, and oh, by the way, your defensive coordinator who, really remade sort of the scheme after Wade Phillips. The San Francisco 49ers could be starting a rookie at quarterback, at some point. It's unreal to me how Tampa's had this entire offseason stack up. Not only returning the 22 starters, which is crazy off of a Super Bowl winning team, but then, still adding some of these pieces. And by the way, Antonio Brown, I still think there's a chance he ends up back there. I don't know really what his market is externally.
You're just going to sleep on the Lions, but I get it.
Yeah, right. Just, another year of underestimating Detroit.
Yeah, that's right. That roar is just so close to being restored. Hey, okay, have I asked you, Charles, about the Justin Fields narrative yet? Even if I have, I still want you to address it. Like, what is your reporting? What do you believe of Justin Fields? I mean, I'm seeing people having him go 10th right now, which is just crazy to me. But what are you coming away with on him?
When you say crazy, I mean 10th as in like falling to 10 or being off the board at 10?
I mean, I'd take him number 1.
Okay.
Okay, wow. I'd take him number 2. I'd take him number 2.
I don't look here. The thing with Fields is he had I think, the uneven performance last year. He had some games that honestly were not great. Like, he had some pretty bad games last year. Now, that said, I like the guy. I think he's really good. I thought the performance against Clemson, all I hear from Clemson's defense stinks. And, it was, you're putting too much stock in one playoff game.
But then we're going to put so much stock in an Indiana game. But, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm with you. I think you got to take the entire cumulative performance. I think you hear the whole first read thing. He's a first read quarterback. How often does he, look at the percentages. How often does he really get to his second read? Well, you know what? The truth is a lot of really good quarterbacks are first read quarterbacks. And that's because they play in systems where, their the first read's open. What are you going to do? Not throw to the first read if he's open? I mean, go back and look at Tua when he's playing with 4 first-round wide receivers. The first guy he looks at is usually open by 10 yards. So, I think there was an element with Ohio State that he played in a system where there were a lot of open first reads. I do think there's a little bit of a hit on him because of Dwayne Haskins. I remember when Haskins came out, and I was asking teams that were kind of nitpicking him beyond sort of the, hey, what are the leadership qualities? What's the character of the guy? They talked about how he led the country in Power 5, like open receivers, like however they quantified that, and how that really made people nervous. And, so I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. I think people have been hot and cold on Fields, sort of in one camp or the other. I'll give you an example. There's an AFC team last season. It was probably mid-season, and there was this idea the AFC team would be in the hunt for the one first, second, or third pick, kind of in that range. So I'm asking the general manager. I'm saying, hey, can you stack up? Where do you see the second quarterback coming from? And I thought, hey, how close are Lawrence and Fields? And he just pushed Fields completely out of the conversation. He's like, no. He's like, it's Lawrence. And then he said, Zach Wilson, and then it's going to be the rest of these guys fighting to be, we'll see who the third receiver off the board is. And I said, really? I said, you wouldn't automatically put Fields even in a conversation in the top 1 or 2 picks. And he was just so he said, no. He's not. He said he's not. the overall skill package there is not, what he would want. I don't know what to tell you. People screw up quarterback evaluations all the time, and somehow we got Mitch Trubisky being taken out of. We got taken out of, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, and there's always some reason for somebody screwing up a quarterback evaluation. I guarantee you 5 guys go in the first round here. There's going to be a couple nasty duds, and, maybe it's a Mac Jones.
He had some open receivers this year.
Yeah, I'm sure Mac Jones probably had a couple open looks at wide receiver. I liked Fields. I watched him. I thought he was a pressure performer. I liked, his ability to make plays. I think he fits to me more where the league's going in terms of quarterbacks being able to do things off script. But I'm not one of these guys who's going to sit here and tell you that I'm a draft eval. I'm not. There's so many experts on draft Twitter that I'm just like, dude, I'm not inserting myself in these conversations. I made the mistake of, I said the other day, and this is literally, I was repeating something that I had a couple NFL teams tell me about, Penei Sewell out of Oregon, and had a team that really loved him, said, hey, if the Jets decided to take him at 2, which they're not going to, but if they did, between he and Becton, this was another opposing team that plays the Jets, told me, I bet you those are the top 2 NFL tackles, not left or right, top 2 NFL tackles 3 years from now. That's how much this guy liked Becton and Sewell as sort of bookends. I said this on Twitter, and I'm not going to repeat who it was, but someone I know and respect texted me and just like went off about how, Rashawn Slater was the, better. I'm just like, dude, whatever, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to have this stupid argument with you and sit in the dark and watch, cut-ups of offensive tackles dropping back, what their foot. Like,
look at that punch, Charles. Look at that punch.
Yeah, I like it. It's fun. Like, I understand it, but the mock draft thing to me is, it's all shots in the dark. I've done mock drafts in the past. Like, I know, look, I hate to tell people, but the truth is, when you're a national reporter or really any reporter, you don't have the time to invest to really break this stuff down, and you don't devote your life's expertise to it. And guess what? Even the people who do in the NFL, they completely screw it up. Dak Prescott, the Cowboys did everything they could to not draft Dak Prescott, okay? If they could have had Jared Goff, they would have taken him. If they could have had Carson Wentz, they would have taken him. They tried to take Paxton Lynch, didn't get him, and then they tried to take Connor Cook.
Oh, my goodness.
So
that's right.
You literally screwed up every possible way you could to land the guy you're paying $40 million a year to. What does that tell you about evaluation of quarterbacks in the NFL? It is an imperfect science. Anybody who tells you they know that this guy is absolutely going to be the greatest thing ever is so full of crap.
Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Charles, great stuff as always, man. Appreciate you taking time to join us.
Sorry, guy. I didn't mean to deliver a 3-minute complaint about how guys so I
loved it.
Look, listen, there are people paid millions of dollars in the NFL. Like, every organization devotes millions and millions of dollars to making the right decisions on draft day, and if every third guy you pick in a draft turns out to be a really good backup or starting caliber player, you're an all-star. If you bat .333 in your draft, it's the same as batting .333 in Major League Baseball. Think about that.
It's amazing. Charles Robinson has been our guest. Joins us every week here at 9 o'clock on Robby and Rexrode. Charles, have a great week, man. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
We'll get your mock next week.
When we come back, we'll react to a little bit of what Charles had to say there. That's coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Don't miss Nashville's best NFL draft coverage on Thursday, April the 29th and Friday, April 30th on 102.5 The Game, presented by Founders Brewery, Apple Collision Centers, and MTGRT.com, your live and local mortgage expert. Looking forward to that coming up here in a couple of weeks, here leading up to the NFL draft. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Thanks to Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports for joining us in the last segment. So why do you think? So that was interesting to hear Charles talk about Justin Fields in this draft, talking to an AFC executive that was in the mix for one of those top 3 picks, and basically the executive brushing off Justin Fields like, yeah, he's not in the same conversation with the Trevor Lawrences and the Zach Wilsons of the world. And look, I mean, that surprises me, and I've been surprised by the narrative around Justin Fields in this draft. I think he's really good. I think he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. Of course, depending on where he ends up and the situation that he's in, just like any other quarterback. But I feel good about Justin Fields in the NFL, but apparently there are a lot of people that are down on Justin Fields and his NFL future.
Yeah, and like Charles said, I mean, look, so there's, 5 guys? How many of them are going to be what people hope they be based on their draft position? I mean, even if Justin Fields falls to 10, that's a very high pick.
Sure.
And that's a high expectation. So of these 5 guys – right? There's not a 6th that I'm not familiar. I mean, there's 5 first-round possible 5 expected first-round quarterbacks,
Correct.
Right? Fields, Lawrence, Wilson,
Lance,
and
Mac Jones,
and the great Mac Jones.
Yes,
Justin Fields, has open receivers, all that's talent around him, but Mac Jones, this guy's incredible.
Gonna move up to get him in the draft.
Yeah. So of those 5, if one of them lives up to the draft positioning, then that's pretty good. That's the reality of drafting quarterbacks in this league.
Agreed.
So, I mean, look, I just look at everything we've seen from Justin Fields, and like Charles said, the one read thing is a knock. Now, it's funny because Dan Orlowski is the guy who introduced the whole isn't first one to leave, last one to show up, which then everybody jumped all over him and he kind of walked it back. He also showed film that kind of refutes the one read idea, but there's numbers on all that stuff, and I mean, there's another problem. Is okay, well, you know how it's probably easier to be a one read quarterback at Ohio State because your first read is open by 5 yards.
Yeah,
I mean,
just throwing the ball, so
it can be count against you because you have those guys, but then it can, you know what I mean? It can count both ways.
Sure.
I mean, so I don't know. I think Justin Fields has all the tools and has improved tremendously. And if you want to talk about grit or anything like that, I mean, the guy got his ribs crushed and kept going. I thought he showed a lot in the playoff. And okay, so Clemson's defense wasn't like a vintage Clemson defense. What does that mean? They only had 8 pros out there?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Hey, but I mean, I've long since 1998 was the year that I decided that I should shut up. I mean, I won't, but I mean, I decided that I have no clue because that's the year that Ryan Leaf came out. And I mean, there was nobody more sure than him. So, to me. So, who knows? I don't know. Justin Fields is going to be great. I just, when I compare him to a Mac Jones or a Zach Wilson, I don't know, man. I think I'd go the Fields route. I think the growth he's demonstrated in just 2 years and 1.5 year really of starting is pretty significant.
I think it is too. But a lot of love for Zach Wilson on the board right now. Yeah. I can't wait to see how that plays out. Yeah. Number 2 overall going to the Jets. It's going to be fun.
Mahadjers?
Yes, Mahadjers.
Raj Holmes?
Yes.
Zach Raj Holmes?
Yes. Going to be just slinging that ball around in New York.
I like Raj Holmes better.
Okay.
You don't like Mahadjers?
No.
I kind of like Mahadjers.
Okay. All right. When we come back, we'll get back into the Nashville Predators and revisit the poll question of the day. Is David Poile placing a little bit too much faith in this Predators team? We'll discuss that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode. You're on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Preds fans, join 102.5 The Game tomorrow night from 6 to 7 p.m. for Smashville Live, featuring former Preds player Colin Wilson, hosted by Robby Stanley, which is me, and by Lindsay Rowley as well. You can also watch the show online via 102.5 The Game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and thegamenashville.com. Smashville Live brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka, Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, and Red Spirits and Wine in Bellevue. Looking forward to a little Smashville Live action tomorrow. Colin Wilson on the program.
That show used to be the Colin Wilson Show.
It did.
When he was with the Nashville Predators.
Bringing it back. I think he did it at Dave & Buster's, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, so bringing it back.
I enjoyed Colin Wilson when he was here. Those guys who always do those pregame, you remember those little, the little soccer things they do? And he would often be sitting there reading a book.
Yeah, he would. Yes, he would.
Kind of a, interesting guy.
He was interesting.
I think there were some Wednesday nights where he showed up to Dave & Buster's in like a tank top and flip-flops.
That sounds about right. Yep. Hey, whatever style works.
Exactly.
They're vibing. Everybody's vibing on the Predators right now.
We're vibing, Robbie.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Big deal. The Nashville Predators, speaking of that local professional hockey team, not a lot done yesterday at the trade deadline. They add Eric Gudbranson, bringing him in on defense. I don't know what sort of a role he's going to have. My guess would be when everyone's healthy, Gudbranson's not going to be in your lineup. That's just a guess. And who knows when he's going to get in. Remember, he's coming from Ottawa to here. So there's going to be a quarantine period before he's even available to play for the Nashville Predators at this point. So a minor move made yesterday by David Poile and the Predators, but no move made in terms of selling and in terms of collecting future assets for some of your expiring contracts. And the question is that the right approach from David Poile and the Predators? That's the subject of today's poll question. Do you agree with David Poile's approach to not be a seller before Monday's trade deadline? 54% say yes, they agree. 46% say no, they do not agree. So pretty split down the middle there in the poll question today.
So it went back the other way a little bit from the last check. Okay.
Good poll question, Porth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was pretty good. I had a different suggestion for it, but it's fine. You normally ignore me.
That's all right.
So like CMA's made the point, and it's a point to keep in mind that if you want to make some significant changes, you obviously can do that in the offseason. Again, this turned into the discussion of, all right, you're down to, can you get something from some expiring deals to help you a little bit, build your assets a little bit, and not necessarily blow up this run that you're on. Now, I will say that taking Granlund out, given the state of this team, if the whole team was together, I think take Granlund out and you're not necessarily punting. You could argue that you're punting if you take Granlund out, given the current state of the team, which, as far as we know, David Poile said yesterday, there's no one coming back this week.
Yep.
And this does not mean, but you can count on them next Tuesday.
Right.
Or whenever they play the Chicago.
I think there's some uncertainty here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and there's only 13 games left, so it's not like you've got a ton of time left to get people back in the fold either.
So you've got that, and you've got the importance of the playoffs, and it's not just, there is more to it. There is the business side of it. There's a lot of factors here, a lot of moving parts. But I was surprised, to hear that, like Poile said, that really he's been resolved, I think, for at least a little while, really to not sell.
Yeah.
That was surprising. And then just the comment on the question of, is this a cup contender? I mean, I know it's kind of funny to say that out loud, but that is why you buy or stand pat, right? If you think you can make a run in the playoffs?
Yeah. I think it was a fair question. And it's interesting, too. Like, I know it feels different, but they're not really in that much of a different spot than they were this time last year at the deadline. Like, the format's different. I mean, you're in a different division now, and the playoff format's even different. So it's very difficult to compare the two situations, but you're right on the bubble. I mean, you're right on the edge, just like you were a season ago. And David Poile talked about that yesterday in his press conference on having more confidence in this group despite the position that they're in this year than he did this time last year. Here's what Predators GM David Poile had to say.
Really probably reached the rock bottom, if you will, with what took place in the first part of this season. Just a lot of players that didn't play well, a lot of things went wrong. And I just think our new coaches, starting with John Hines, has really established himself with our our team and how we want to play. And again, it's got a real good buy-in for everybody. You can see I would say the excitement with how our players play. I mean, after the game and when we win a game, how much fun they seem to be having with each other. It's just been a wake-up call. I was really glad to see Ryan Ellis return to our lineup, and especially pleased with his comments to say that when he left and when he came back, it's a totally different team, and that's exactly what we wanted to have happen. A lot of players have just renewed energy and a better performance in their game, and a lot of new players on our team that weren't here last year at this time that are playing significant roles and look like players that could be playing significant roles for us in the coming years. So a lot more optimism today than say there was last year at this time.
So David Poile, as he said there, a lot more optimism about this group than he had about the group last year. And look, I think it's obviously easy to say that when you've won 12 out of your last 15 games. I think the question you've got to ask and answer if you're a Predators fan is David Poile maybe putting too much faith in this team and too much confidence in the hot streak that they've been on as of late? Or do you really believe that it's not a hot streak? Like they've just turned this thing around and this is more along the lines of what this team is now moving forward?
I don't know. I think it's been really impressive on a lot of fronts. It's also been incredibly impressive from the goaltending perspective.
Yes.
And that's the one thing that, while you want to believe that UC Saros has taken a step to like he's just on a different level, it's still a pretty short period of time to know that, right? 15 games.
I'd say so.
At the end of the day, do you feel like this approach leading up to the deadline and yesterday is all just banking on the fact that UC Saros stays hot?
I think it's a big part of it. I mean, I think there's got to be a dose of realism involved here. And like David Poile knows this. Like UC Saros is not going to keep up a .960 save percentage. Like nobody's going to do that. So you know that if you're David Poile. But I do think it's a fair question to ask, okay, it may not be .960, but has he turned a corner here where you feel good about .925? Like if you get .925 consistently out of Saros, you're going to win a lot of hockey games. I mean, that's a really good starting goaltender save percentage in this league. So maybe the Predators and David Poile believe that Saros, while it's not going to be .960 and he's not going to be playing on a different planet like he is right now, maybe he's turned a corner in their minds and there's something that they can point to that makes them believe this is more along the lines of what he is moving forward.
See, another thing here is, so Gover had that really good point about Pecorine, which is interesting. It's interesting that this started right during that. I mean, I wouldn't have made that connection. Right after the, comments about him wanting to stay here. But whether it's that or something else, there has been, I don't think there's any question, an intangible maybe assistance from all of the doubting and just how the negativity, all the trade talk, all those things help galvanize the team, right? Okay, well now we just talked about how great you guys are, and your GM just put his money where his mouth is. So now I think that the pressure changes. The pressure is there. I don't think there's been pressure because it's like, well, everybody gave up on him, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's easier. I'm not saying it's easy because it's been very impressive what they've done. But those conditions, I think, sometimes create that. Now we're going to see how they react to, okay, now go get in the playoffs, and here's a great schedule for you to do that. And no idea when you're getting anybody back either. I mean, there's a lot on these guys right now.
Well, and it's interesting, too. Like the deadline comes and goes. You've made this decision. And look at the 3 games this week. You've got Tampa at home tonight, and then you're taking on Carolina twice. I mean, you're about to find out in a hurry what this team looks like. Now, I get it. Like, if the playoffs come around and this team makes it, hopefully at that point you've got some more bodies back and the team looks different than it does right now. But, I mean, this is a heck of a time to be playing Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Carolina back-to-back-to-back.
Yes, it is.
I'll also say what I said yesterday, that I think it's unfair if fans change their expectations now that they kept Granlund and Haula, you better go win in the playoffs. I just don't feel like that's fair because they are going to be heavy, heavy underdogs.
Right. Like, I don't think it's fair that you would change your expectation as a fan as to what you expect the end result to be. But I do think it's fair to ask the question, okay, if you believe that they can't beat a Tampa or a Carolina in the playoffs, why are you doing this? Why are you holding on to these assets? I think that's absolutely fair. So if it doesn't happen, I think it's fair to be upset with David Poile and the management by saying, all right, you kept all this group together, you could have gotten some assets in return, and you got beat in the first round by Carolina.
Well, what if you don't make it? What if you don't? Very, very possible.
It is.
I mean, Chicago's within 2 points. You got 3 straight games against them next week. You don't know how healthy you'll be. Very possible. Yeah. And if that's the case, there's a lot of anger at Poile a few weeks ago. It'll come back.
When we come back, some interesting comments made by David Poile yesterday on the futures of Mikael Granlund and Matthias Ekholm. We'll react to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day here on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Make sure you stay tuned for Darren Donica Chase. They're going to have the Eddie George press conference coming up from TSU right at 10 o'clock to begin the show. So make sure you're staying tuned in for that. Right now, discussing all things Nashville Predators at the trade deadline yesterday. Not a ton of activity. The Predators make a small move to go bring in defenseman Erik Gudbranson from the Ottawa Senators. It would be Gudbranson's 5th team in the last 3 years. So a lot of movement for him, giving up a 7th rounder in 2023 for him. So, the price is not anything that you feel you're totally broken over the bank about. But An addition nonetheless, Joe Rexrode. We made fun of people yesterday. We owe the people an apology for making fun of the 13% yesterday on the poll question that said to buy. The Predators technically were a buyer yesterday at the deadline.
Yep. Good job, troll bots. Apologies. And per Twitter, either a terrible or wonderful get for the Preds.
Yes.
And Preds Twitter.
There's really no in between.
I'm talking Vingan and his Micah Blake McCurdy. Terrible. Willie and Hal. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So there you go. You can
decipher any way you want to.
Right. You can find whatever you want to find on Twitter.
That's right. Twitter continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. Joe, some more interesting news coming out of the David Poile press conference yesterday regarding the future of a couple of key players that we've talked a lot here on the show today about. Let's start with Mikael Granlund because obviously I think in terms of the run they've been on as of late, the Ekholm discussion for a trade, I think, largely went out the door a couple of weeks ago. But I was still leaving it open to the possibility of Granlund potentially being on the move. And now the trade deadline's come and gone, and we know that Granlund's going to be here the rest of the year. But he is a free agent after this year. And the question is, are the Predators going to make him a priority as they move forward here in the future? And I asked David Poile yesterday at the press conference about Mikael Granlund and his future and whether or not he would be interested in bringing Granlund back into a contract beyond this year. Here's what Predators general manager David Poile had to say.
Well, it's not the right time or place, and I have not talked to Granny nor his agent, but again, he's been a terrific player for us, and if he's interested, we're interested. He's certainly played really, really well. There's a lot of things in the offseason, starting with expansion that we all have to deal with. Once again, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, but I would have to say that where we stand in terms of our relationship, his performance with our team, our happiness with him, his happiness with us, is, without exactly asking him, I would say it's probably at an all-time high. So I would certainly love to engage in that conversation with Mikael and his agent after the year to see if that's a possibility.
So that was David Poile yesterday at the press conference talking about the future of Mikael Granlund. And look, Joe, I mean, we said this going into the deadline. Not everything has to be figured out at the deadline as regards to the future of this team and exactly what it's going to look like moving forward here. But to me, an additional way that you can kind of sell this, if you're the Predators, that the decision to basically stand pat is the right one, is if you find a way to bring Granlund back in the fold. Like if he's a part of the team next year or for the next couple of years, whatever contract you would come to an agreement on there, then I think you look back at this decision, even if you're the Predators and you get bounced in the first round or whatever the case would be, I think you look at it and say, okay, well, at least they didn't lose Granlund after that. He's still back in the fold. But if you don't, I still think they're going to be open to a lot of criticism here. I'm interested to see what that looks like because you've got the expansion draft coming up, so you're not signing Granlund before the expansion draft. He's going to hit free agency. Is your offer going to be competitive enough to where he wants to come back? If it's in the same ballpark, does Granlund really like it here? Is that something that he wants to do? I mean, I think that's an interesting question as they move forward here.
Right. I mean, that outcome to me helps answer I mean, look, if they don't make the playoffs, then people are going to be upset. If they don't, to me, let's say they make the playoffs and they take Tampa Bay to 7.
Yeah.
But they don't re-sign Granlund. Okay, well, don't make the playoffs, completely flame out from here, but if you keep him, then I think that's the better outcome, right? And that to me would be, and it's not like Poile made it sound like he has any sort of inside information that's going to happen, but that's a big part of this. If you're not going to get anything for him with his deal expiring, if you can bring him back the way he's played this year and the uncertainty down the middle moving forward, that would be big. That's the biggest part to me of this, of making this a successful decision.
And then yesterday, I thought maybe the strongest comments that David Poile made all day were in regards to Mattias Ekholm. Now, we know Ekholm has been a part of trade rumors that we've talked about here on the show. He was number one on the Athletics big board. I mean, Pierre LeBrun, Elliot Friedman, everybody was talking about Mattias Ekholm and his future with the Predators. And David Poile, very strong in his stance yesterday about Ekholm and about his desire to keep Ekholm a part of the fold here in Nashville moving forward. Here's what Preds GM David Poile had to say.
In terms of expansion, I think we have that covered. I mean, I'm not losing Matthias Ekholm in expansion, if that's what you're asking me. I've got that covered. I mean, again, Matthias has been a good player for us, and again, his name got thrown out there a lot in trade baits and different things. But I mean, my next conversation with Matthias will be after this year about how he thinks he fits into the future of this hockey club and whether he would like to be here longer, not whether we want to trade him.
So that was pretty honest stuff from David Poile yesterday about Matthias Ekholm, saying when it comes to the expansion draft, I'm not losing Matthias Ekholm to expansion. And the next conversation that I'm going to have with Ekholm is about his future here, how he fits into it, and whether or not he wants to be here moving forward. So, I mean, that was about as direct as it gets from a general manager discussing a player and their future here. And it sounds like David Poile is not trading Matthias Ekholm. It doesn't look like he's going anywhere.
Yeah, and that was the blow it up model of what Poile hopes and said is rock bottom from 15 games ago and the weeks preceding it. So that's great news, if you're a Preds fan, if you can keep him. If they can work out a long-term deal and Matthias Ekholm can be a part of this thing, just like Yossi will be, just like Forsberg will be, we think. I mean, I'm talking long-term, like several years. Just like Ellis will be, I think.
We think.
I mean, it's something, one of these foundational pieces could go, but I think the most likely change is probably down the middle.
I think so, too.
And Ekholm, you want Ekholm to be part of your team.
You do. And I think he's going to be a very important part of this group as they move forward here. The Predators back in action tonight, taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. They'll have another crack at the defending Cup champions tonight at home at Bridgestone Arena. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. Pre-game at 6 o'clock here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Joe, good show. Enjoyed it?
Hockey, baby.
That's right.
Vibing with some hockey.
Vibing. That does it for us today here on Robby and Rexrode. We are vibing. Darren Donick and Chase coming up next. This is ESPN 102.5 The Game.